shillings. His concern is therefore that there's tribulations, ridicule, pecuniary embarrassment, and negative social impact, economic impact that pending bills have had on the local business community who supplied or undertook a service for the county governments, and the attendant slowdown in actual project completion, the rise in stalled projects dotting counties, with county governors prioritizing new projects instead of the completion of those which have stalled. The other motion is a motion of renaming of Murang'a University of Technology to Kenneth Matiba University of Technology, as proposed by Senator Isaac Maura. In the motion, he states that, aware that Murang'a University of Technology is a chartered university established under Section 13 of the Universities Act 2012 and is positioning itself to developing a distinctive profile as a progressive and international technical university, growing its enrollment strategically. He therefore seeks and urges the Senate that the national government, in remembrance of the Matiba's contribution to our nation, to rename Murang'a University of Technology to Kenneth Matiba University of Technology. I can see the speaker is already in the chamber. We welcome you to these proceedings. You can catch us on KBC Channel 1.
And let us pray.
And on our YouTube
Almighty
channel.
God, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor and blessings as your servants whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Orders 226, 1 and 232B, I hereby report to the Senate that a petition has been submitted through the Office of the Clerk by Bernard Washira Waihere and Jacqueline Namweye Mutere. In the petitioners state that A, that following political violence that erupted in Kenya after the disputed elections in 2007, the people of Kenya embarked upon comprehensive reforms aimed at ensuring Kenyans transitioned into peaceful, prosperous, inclusive, and stable country. B, that one of the measures adopted to address long-term issues that had contributed to the said violence was setting up the Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Commission with a mandate to promote peace, justice, national unity, healing, and reconciliation by, among other things, inquiring into the gross violations of human rights and historical injustices. C, that according to the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Act, the Attorney General was to table the TJRC report in Parliament, for its consideration and implementation, and that to date, the Parliament has not considered the report, hence delaying its implementation. D, that victims of the violence continue to suffer from the violation as a result of the delay. And E, that there continues to exist instances of gross human rights abuses committed against innocent Kenyans, resulting in death, serious injury, and trauma, like the cases of extrajudicial executions, shooting of unarmed demonstrators in the 2007 election cycle. The petitioners therefore pray that the Senate A, requests transmission of the report from the National Assembly to the Senate for consideration and adoption. 2, passes all necessary legislation in order to enable victims of gross human rights violation as identified in the TJRC process receive physical and psychological support. And 4, causes the establishment of a parliamentary select committee to oversight the implementation of the TJRC report, recommendations, and promote national healing and reconciliation. 3, honorable senators, pursuant to Standing Order 231, I shall now allow comments, observations, or clarifications in relation to the petition for not more than 30 minutes. Senator Wetangula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would want to make a comment on that petition and thank the petitioners for bringing that petition to the right house. Mr. Speaker, after the fireball in the country in 2007, yours truly here and 7 others, the late Mutula Kilonzo, Honorable Mother Karua, Professor Sam Ongeri, Senator James Orengo, Deputy President William Ruto, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, and Dr. Sally Kosgei spent hours on end at the Serena Amani room with the late Dr. Kofi Annan and other international interlocutors. Among the milestones of Serena, Mr. Speaker, was to address the historical injustices that had cemented and exasperated in this country the mistrust and distrust between individuals and individuals, communities and communities, political formations and political formations. The TJRC, Mr. Speaker, was to address the historical foundations of these suspicions, hatred, and dislike for each other, which was including but not limited to issues of land, alienation, and dispossession, and all the issues including extrajudicial killings that you have listed in the petition. Mr. Speaker, millions of public resources were spent on the TJRC commission headed by the late Bethwell Kiplagat. It had its own dramas, but they gave a report to His Excellency the President. Dutifully, the President forwarded the report to the National Assembly as the house of first call. One would have expected, Mr. Speaker, that the report be debated in the National Assembly, adopted or rejected as the case may be, but thereafter forwarded to this House, out of which we could concur with their decision if it is positive or go to mediation to adopt it. It has been gathering dust in the National Assembly for the last over 7 years. Mr. Speaker, this is like an ostrich that sees a raging fire coming, and because its head is small and the body is big, dips the head in the sand, hoping that the fire will not affect it, when in fact the fire will hit the most vulnerable parts, the feathers that are left out. It is our duty, Mr. Speaker, and I'm so grateful to whoever has brought this petition, that the committee responsible that you will assign this committee digs into the historical effects of this delay and has an upshot of bringing that report for the debate in this House as the House of first instance. Because, Mr. Speaker, we cannot live with a historical baggage that makes us continuously unsafe with each other, suspicious of each other, and sitting on a time bomb that can explode at every election. And Mr. Speaker, remember, as I finish, the TJRC report touched on virtually every single aspect of Kenya's negativity. And it's only by confronting these facts that we can heal this country and look to the future. Because, Mr. Speaker, even the Bible, the Holy Book says, the beginning of healing is founded on the acknowledgement of wrongdoing. And the small word sorry, which the President had the humility to say in the National Assembly in one of his addresses, he said sorry to Kenyans. But I want to encourage that we go beyond that word sorry and compensate those who are affected, remedy the wrongs where people are dispossessed, and make Kenyans happy with each other, comfortable with each other, knowing that we have no spare country or alternative country except this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sakaja.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first I want to thank Mr. Bernard Washira and Jacqueline Namuye for actually presenting this petition at this important time in our country. As Senator Wetangula has very eloquently taken us through the history, we have become a country that lives in denial and that loves sweeping things under the carpet, Mr. Speaker. The cycle of ethnic divisions, the cycle of violence that have been mainly ethnic-based, Mr. Speaker, started many, many years ago. The 2007 process was a painful one. And I'm sure Senator Wetangula will tell you, at that time when they were in that Amani room, in as much as I was a young boy, I was there, mtu ya mkono. And that is when I got to 11. He knows what I'm talking about. But even then, the young people of this country felt quite alienated through all of those processes. Mr. Speaker, if you go through the TJRC report, it goes to the core of fundamental issues, whether it is land, whether it is historical injustices in Wagala, whether it is communities that have been disenfranchised by successive regimes through development or rather non-development, whether it is the issue of lack of equality of opportunities, because, Mr. Speaker, you can never have cohesion where people in this country do not feel they have equality of opportunities. Unless a child born in Nyamira feels and the parent knows that their child in Nyamira has the exact same shot at life as a child born in Kisumu or in Nyeri, we can never have national cohesion. So, Mr. Speaker, what we've always been doing as a country, because 2007 showed us, before that we used to say Kenya is an island of peace within a sea of turmoil. Because if you looked at our neighbors, Uganda had issues, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Kenya had always been heralded as this island of peace. But 2007 showed us that what we felt was a fabric that holds this country together was non-existent, and that indeed we're always one election cycle away from destruction. Mr. Speaker, even if we talk about the handshake today, we cannot talk about the handshake ignoring completely the work that was done through the TJRC. And that is why I want to impress upon you, Mr. Speaker, that this committee needs to bring that back up. This country needs to have difficult conversations with itself. Do Kenyans feel Kenyan wherever they are? Is there actually a unity of the people, or it's just leaders who come together? That when Senator Wetangula does an alliance with Senator Omogeni, we'll say the Kisis and the Luyas have come together, Mr. Speaker. What does a young person in this country feel like when they have to go through all that they have to go through just to get an ID, because their community is a border community, Mr. Speaker, and many, many more questions. So we'd like to ask that this committee take it seriously, look at it within the context of building bridges as well, because that is where we're moving to as a country, because there is nothing more important for us in this country today than the unity of our people. So I want to thank the petitioners, and I pray that that committee do invite all of us throughout this process, and to ask really the National Assembly why it has sat on this. And I know I was in the National Assembly in the last parliament, but why has it sat on TJRC for all this time? When the president in the last parliament came and gave an apology, Mr. Speaker, as I wind up, it looked like something simple, but I could see the eyes of some of our colleagues, there are tears in their eyes. Just an apology by the president for historical injustices meted out on some communities was enough for some people. In the last budget, or rather in the last State of the Nation, the President has said 10 billion shillings to be put aside for the processes of historical injustices and, I don't know, a library, but under which legal framework? We need as a House to put that together so that we stop paying lip service to this very important thing of uniting our country and building bridges. Thank you.
I wish just to disrupt by making a communication. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting students and teachers from Sally and Mixed Secondary School, Nyandarua County. In our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. Also, Honorable Senators, I would also like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon of our visiting members of County Assembly, Public Accounts and Investments Committee from Mandera County Assembly who are on a study visit in the Senate. They are Honorable Bishar M.A. Abdullahi, Chairperson, Honorable Abdullahi Yunus Guliye, Vice Chair, Honorable Abdunur Dagane Rafat, Member, Honorable Fatuma Omar Kasai, Member, Honorable Abbas Abdile Mohammed, Member, Hussein Adan Haji, Member, and Honorable Khalif Hussein Hassan, Member. On behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I welcome them to the Senate, and I wish them well for the remainder of their stay. I thank you. Senator Cheriot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to join the rest of my colleagues who've spoken to the very important issue that is before us this afternoon of a petition brought by concerned citizens who should be commended for a very gallant move, reminding this House that as leaders drawn from all corners of this republic, if we do not sort out many of the issues that are being canvassed in this petition that are contained in the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Committee, Mr. Speaker, then we are walking down a very dangerous path. Indeed, as it has been observed on many occasions, Mr. Speaker, God has been faithful to us as a country on many occasions where we have been on the brink of precipice, just about to collapse as a country. We have had the opportunity which many other countries have never had, which is to be able to sober up and confront the issues, albeit not in a conclusive manner. Before us, Mr. Speaker, we know that in this House, we have the distinguished honor again of not only having two members who served in that, the first initial exercise that led to the formation of the TJRC, that is Senator Moses Wetangula and Senior Senator Professor Ongeri. We also have this year with us Senator Zamos Wako and Senator Haji, serving in another committee that is almost doing an exercise almost similar to what was done, to the work that was done by these great gallant seniors in this House, Mr. Speaker. But what motivation do the senators that are currently carrying out the Building Bridges initiative have if we have not executed even a single recommendation of the earlier version of Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission, Mr. Speaker? Therefore, I want to request that the committee that will be tasked with executing this petition expeditiously carries out the request of the petitioners, ensures that they lay in place all that is necessary for us to begin as a House, discuss that report, agree or disagree with many of the recommendations, because if we are not careful, as we head towards another cycle of election, what evidence or what satisfaction do we have as a country that should there be any disagreements, that this time people will not give up and say these efforts of trying to bring us together and saying we are living peacefully. You remember how difficult it was the last election cycle, where we even went ahead and had a president that has been sworn in legally and another one that has been sworn in, you know, in sort of like a private function, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, this is a very important issue which should not be treated casually. I look forward in exactly 2 months, Mr. Speaker, to debating the TJRC report in the Proceedings of Senate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to also add my voice to the petition on the TJRC report. Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by saying that I sit in the Senate Standing Committee on National Cohesion. And today, many, many years after the post-election violence, as a committee, we are still grappling with cases of compensation for victims of post-election violence. Mr. Speaker, it will be remembered that in the year 1997 in South Africa, they established a commission to look into historical injustices, especially visited on the people of South Africa during the apartheid era. And there was so much debate on that report that some people were not sure whether this was not just a Kleenex commission where people were given the tissue paper to wipe their tears, and the report was never going to be implemented. Mr. Speaker, I am looking forward myself to a situation where if we need to adopt a resolution of the Senate to lift the report that was tabled before Parliament, and that report is tabled before this Senate for debate and for action. One of the documents, Mr. Speaker, that I was looking forward to be tabled before the BBI Commission was the TJRC report. Because it doesn't make sense for the BBI Commission to go around the country seeking to reconcile and unite our nation when a cardinal report that chronicles all the injustices visited on the people of this country is lying in the shelves of the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, I would want to urge the leadership of the Senate to expedite that process that will bring the report here before the Senate for debate, and not just debate for the sake of debate, but debate that will produce results and action to remedy the wrongs that have been visited on huge populations in this country for many years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Pareno Judith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to contribute to this very important debate. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the name that was given to this commission, Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Commission, and the report itself speaks for itself. Because we are talking about the truth about ourselves as Kenyans. What did we do to each other, against each other? How did we harm each other? Where did we go wrong as a country against each other? We need that truth to come out if we are serious about taking this country forward. Then we talk about justice. Justice for who and against who? It is justice for this country, justice for those who are wronged, justice for those who are tortured, land and historical injustices against each other, committed against each other, oppression, discrimination, the massacres, the kind of cohesion that we need in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the person sitting on this Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Commission report is the enemy number one for this country. If we are serious, then we would want to stay on truth. We would want to have justice for each other, and we would want to stay in harmony as a country. So if we care about our cohesiveness, then we should actually go down in history as having upheld what this Truth and Justice Reconciliation Commission had come up with. Mr. Speaker, this name also speaks for reconciliation. We need to reconcile ourselves as a nation. Once we forgive each other, then it means that we can stay together and we can work together for the sake of this country. But if we just shelf this and the decisions that had been arrived at and the recommendations that had been arrived at, and nobody bothers to even implement, then it means that we actually do not care about the future of this country. Mr. Speaker, I want to actually say that this is connected to the building bridges. We are out to build bridges for this country. We are out to say sorry to each other. We should bring this together with the BBI, and if we come out with a proper, as a committee, the committee goes and looks at it, and we're able to come up with, pick out the recommendations that came out and be able to link it to the BBI, then we should be able to take this country forward. So, Mr. Speaker, this is needs urgent attention in view of the mood in the country of building bridges so that we come up with a solution once and for all. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Lagarde Christopher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for also giving me this chance. Just at the onset as the Chair of Education to welcome the students and visitors in the gallery. And then come to this particular petition, Mr. Speaker. As I want to say I support it to the core part of it. Just I want to begin from the initials of this particular petition concerning the TJRC Commission. That it begins with, Mr. Speaker, sir, about truth. And I want to say that we must pursue the truth of this matter seriously. Because as even the Bible says, it's only the truth that will set us free. We must revisit this particular report, Mr. Speaker, sir, and check on the recommendations and find out the truth that will help us in this particular country. Otherwise, we shall be a country that will continue setting commissions that will never have solutions to the problems that we have been facing in this particular country. So the truth on justice matters on this particular recommendation must be followed seriously. Otherwise, even the current committee on building bridges initiative will not help us much. We must visit historical injustices that have been facing this particular country for years in an attempt to reconcile ourselves forever in this country. So I want to support it, Mr. Speaker, and say that the committee that will actually handle this particular matter must go to this particular report, scrutinize it very well, and make sure that the truth in it must come to this particular Senate so that this nation may receive healing forever. So I want to say, Mr. Speaker, I support this particular petition, and this is the right time for this particular Senate to take it seriously. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Professor Ongeri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to write on this petition. First of all, let me welcome the students from, I think, Nyandarua, who are here with us, and also the County Assembly of Mandera Public Accounts Committee. We had a full session with them in the morning, witnessing what we do in the Public Accounts Committee. Those of us who happen to be in Serena talks immediately after the post-election violence, 2007, can safely say, as Senator Wetangula said earlier on, that it was not a mood that you could tolerate one another in that room. It was so tense, the country was heavily polarized, and everybody was looking at a solution, whether you were on the opposing side or on the government side. What at that time was needed was brokering the peace within a reasonable period of time. And as we agonized through those sittings, one thing that came clear in our minds is that we needed to reconcile this nation to one another. And therefore, peace became a major platform for us to be able to bequeath the generations of Kenya in anticipation that when Kenyans come together, we'll be able to live together in harmony. We'll be able to live as Kenyans without recognizing the ethnicity or the boundaries that divide us in every way, in every aspect. Mr. Speaker, that's why we came up with TJRC Commission report. And it was very well executed. And the issues that were being canvassed there is that never again should this country go to war against each other. And that's why all the time I stand, wherever there is any dispute, my clarion language is dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. Because I saw what disputes can lead to. Where a lot of people who were killed, where a lot of people who are displaced, and today we yet have to deal with those who are displaced from their communities, from their places of abode. That has not been resettled. And we are hoping that when the TJRC report will come out, it will give Kenyans the opportunity to ventilate their feelings and be able to look for ways and means of bridging the differences together. I still stand by that. But unfortunately, when this report was tabled at our sister house, the National Assembly, it is stuck there. My first reaction, Mr. Speaker, is that we should be the first point of call at the Senate level. And if it need be, in looking at this petition by these two gallant Kenyans, we should be able to recall that report to this place, the Senate level, as a first point of call, so that we can be able to debate and bequeath to Kenyans the conclusions of that report. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I think we should not rubbish the BBI. The BBI is in response to what has become a mutation problems in this country. And I want to state here, without an apology, that unless we are careful as a nation, that this country is mutating, and what you are seeing today, family killing one another, mercilessly, people seeking rents left, right, center, this country is being turned to a country of mafias by the mutation of what happened 2007, 2008, which has not been attended through the recommendation of the TJRC report. And we are now seeing the eminent resuscitation of various groups coming up. Mr. Speaker, I want to plead passionately that in order to save this country from collapse, in order to save this country from the level of Colombia, Mexico, where the mafias have dominated the society. And you don't have to look afar to see what is happening now within our society. Let us make sure that this report, now that the petition is before this House, or it's been brought to this House, that we should do everything possible to retrieve that report from the National Assembly. Let us debate it here. Let the Kenyans get the benefit of that report. And when the BBI comes, it will also add flavor to this report. We shall have a complete, comprehensive report to guide this nation towards the path of peace. I thank you for this attention.
Honorable Senators, the time allocated for that is over, so I'll only allow Senator Naomi, who was in time Wako.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important petition. As I also take this opportunity to thank the petitioners on implementation of the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission report. Mr. Speaker, we know very well that Kenya has gone through many things, and people's rights have been violated in different ways, and even now we have a lot of dispute over boundaries. We have land dispute. We have a lot of conflict between different ethnic groups, and we know how much Kenyans have suffered and the number of people who have even lost their lives. This report is very important for us as a nation to look at and also implement all the recommendations that has been given. It is unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, we use a lot of resources in forming commissions. We use a lot of money when we form different commissions. As they work, we use a lot of money, but when we receive the report, then we shelve the good reports. Time has been consumed. Our money, the taxpayers' money has been used, and if we don't implement that report or the recommendations, then as a country, I think we are not doing justice to ourselves. Mr. Speaker, we all recommend and appreciate the effort of BBI, but if we are not careful, the hard work, the commitment they are having, and what they are doing will not have any relevance to this nation, because again, after they compile their report and everything, it will be shelved. So our recommendation is that the implementation of this takes place as soon as possible, and as senators, it is high time for us to commit ourselves to this so that we even prevent the challenges that are ahead of us. Mr. Speaker, when you look at what is happening in our nation today, you fear what will happen during campaigns and even when 2022 comes. If we implement some of this, we will be able to prevent some of the coming problems and challenges that has always been there. And so we have no option, but we have to support this petition and also see how best it can be implemented and the lives of people who have been affected. It is unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, some people who participated in this have already gone to be with the Lord. Others who are affected have already died, but it is good for us to give it attention. So I support the petition. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 2321, the petition stands committed to the relevant standing committee, in this case, the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs, and Human Rights. So in terms of Standing Order 2322, the committee will be required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading the prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. What's your point of order, Senator Wetangula?
Mr. Speaker, my point of order is that given that there is not a single petition in this House and the previous House that any committee has ever brought a report within the 60 days that the standing orders envisage, and given the magnitude and importance of this particular petition, can we as a House have the undertaking from the illustrious chairman of the Committee of Justice and Legal Affairs that indeed he will deliver a reasoned and productive report to this House within the 60 days, and we'll hold him to it, Mr. Speaker.
That's a good contribution from the Senator Bungoma. Chairman Cherarege, can you see you smiling? Maybe that may not be enough. You need to assure this House that you'll bring the report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to assure the House that as provided for by the standing orders that within 60 days, and my committee has an history. We did table a report on Tala historical injustices, and also on the report on the use of the word Arambe. So I want to assure you, with our zealous and overzealous commitment, we will deliver within the provided timeline of the standing orders.
Thank you. I have another petition, Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 2261A and 230B. I hereby report to the Senate that a petition has been submitted through the Office of the Clerk by residents of Barwago location, Bula Mpia Ward, Mandera County. 2, in the petition, the petitioners state that A, they applied for and were allocated plots in Buako location by the county government of Mandera in or about the year 2013. B, that after complying with all the relevant requirements, the county government of Mandera issued them with allotment letters. C, that they have dutifully paid to the county government of Mandera land rates and all other statutory requisite payments. D, that in or about February 2014, the government of Kenya forcefully evicted them from the land and unlawfully occupied the same. E, that the action of the government's offense express provision of the Constitution and statutes with regard to compulsory acquisition of land by government. 3, the petitioners therefore pray that the Senate investigate the matter with a view of ensuring that the property rights of the petitioners are upheld and the due process of the law is followed in the event of compulsory acquisition by government. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 231, I shall now allow comments, observations, or clarifications in relation to the petition for not more than 30 minutes. Senator Halaka Abshiro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the residents of Mandera on their petition on the area they mentioned. Mr. Speaker, this issue is very prevalent in our counties and even in the entire country. Mr. Speaker, the government, both at national and county levels, is becoming the #1 grabber of land from our communities. Just because they have they're the bearer of duty, just because they have the instruments of power, it doesn't give them any right to really mistreat communities. And especially in areas like Mandera, Isiolo, and northern Kenya, where the land is mostly community land, we have seen a trend where through gazettements and through, wanton gazettements, the communities have been disenfranchised, and they are, Mr. Speaker, there's too much noise. The majority leader, I need to...
Consult in low tones, the leader of majority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this issue is very emotive and very close to the hearts of a lot of people from northern Kenya. The reason being, Mr. Speaker, and I've said this and I will keep saying this until the cows come home. Mr. Speaker, the community lands, especially in our counties, and even in our national jurisdictions, are being converted by government, and whereby now we as communities are seeing government as the #1 grabber of our land. Mr. Speaker, in the last 2 years alone, over 50 areas were gazetted as government protected area forests. We support forests, but without any compensation, without providing any alternatives, that is tantamount to grabbing land from communities. So while I stand to support this, I am very disturbed that this trend is so prevalent in all counties. And I would like this Senate to really look at what is happening to community land all around our countries, especially in northern Kenya, where a lot of this land is being deemed free just because it's supposed to be grazing land in the past, and now it's appearing as though it's free land for grabbing. And it doesn't make sense for the duty bearer, somebody that's supposed to be providing land to the people or compensation, to just take the land and evict people. And the human rights abuses, and we're looking forward to the Lands Committee where I sit, and we will definitely make sure that we come to the bottom of this, because this is becoming too prevalent for us to bear. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support this petition.
Senator Rose Nyamunga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity also to support the petition.
What's your point of intervention, Senator Sakaja?
Mr. Speaker, apologies for interrupting Senator Nyamunga. But Mr. Speaker, I believe there's a question that you will need to help us determine. And I wish Senator Kamar could allow you, because I need you to consider this issue. Mr. Speaker, I will need you to consider this matter. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution gives every Kenyan the right to petition Parliament. And that is a general provision in the Constitution. Then it follows that we have acts of Parliament as well as our standing orders that guide the exercise of that right by Kenyans. And I'd like also the Leader of Majority to listen. Mr. Speaker, we reviewed our standing orders last year. And the reason why we reviewed our standing orders, if you look at Standing Order 47, Standing Order 48, members used to bring statements on matters that should actually be at the County Assembly. And that is why the reading is that a senator may request a statement from a committee relating to any matter under the mandate of the committee that is of county-wide, inter-county, national, region, or international concern. In as much as that is to do with statements, the spirit of that amendment was that because we are not a county assembly, the Senate should not deal with a matter that is restricted or is affecting one ward, because that then should go to a county assembly. But matters that are inter-county, intra-county, within a county-wide, or international are what should come to the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I think you need to make a determination, and I'm asking for a considered judgment, Mr. Speaker, or decision by yourself, that even when it comes to petitions, though this one has been committed, it will be discussed, should the Senate really be addressing petitions that are only affecting one ward within a county? And if so, then what should the county assembly be doing with respect to petitions? Mr. Speaker, I hold that we need to deal with inter-county or county-wide matters at the Senate so that we cannot look like just a glorified or rather a bigger assembly of a county. We have 1450 wards in this country, and every ward in this country has an issue. If every ward was to bring a petition, we will never be able to deal with them. Mr. Speaker, I ask not even for judgment, for ruling now, but for a considered view on that particular matter. I think it was an omission by the Rules and Procedure Committee when we amended our standing orders, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Moses Wetangula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my distinguished colleague from Nairobi, my nephew, has a point that is only clever by half. Mr. Speaker, while he has a point, but we must appreciate, Mr. Speaker, and my colleagues who come from northern Kenya, like Senator Abshiro, Senator Fatuma, Farhia, and others, know that, Mr. Speaker, there are certain intricate issues, however narrow they may be. A petitioner feels that the only house where they can get justice is this house. Because, Mr. Speaker, I've practiced law for a very long time in the northern region of Kenya. The deep-rooted clanism sometimes makes it impossible for an individual from a particular clan to get any iota of justice in the county. And that's why they come here. So, Mr. Speaker, while he's right that we don't need to overload ourselves with issues that can be resolved at the counties, it is incumbent upon the office of the clerk in processing the petition, where such a situation abounds, to carry out an inquiry on the petitioners as to why they have chosen to come to this house and not the county assembly, because they have a purpose and a reason for coming here. And we pride ourselves, distinguished Senator for Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, that we are the house of reference, the house of justice, the house of last resort, the house of the wise, the house devoid of erratic thinkers, and a house that will give hope and future to this country. And that is what we must remain, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you for your contributions. And I think this is, being a petition, and the Constitution allows any Kenyan to petition, I think they have a right, but you have raised a valid point, but they have a right to petition. And we also look at most of, when these things come to the clerk and finally to myself, we also evaluate and look at what issues are being raised. Because sometimes when they're coming from that level, there's a reason why it has been brought to this house. Maybe the county assembly is already compromised in terms of tackling that matter, And that's why they are finding an alternative house that can address the issue. Yes, Senator Sakaja.
Mr. Speaker, for clarity, first of all, mine is not an opinion. It's a request for considered, thinking around it. I don't question the right of the people to come here. I don't question how the Senate has been, put on a pedestal. My question is on the matter of scope, not on mandate, on the issue of scope. Mr. Speaker, I have 85 wards in Nairobi, all with issues. And many of those petitions I have sent to the county, I'll be so happy if those petitions come to this house and resolved in 60 days. So it's not a matter of mandate or how the Senate is looked at, but a matter of scope, Mr. Speaker. And that's why I was not asking for a judgment now, but it's a matter that we can consider. Maybe I can put my thoughts more, clear in writing, because we might be saving ourselves something in future, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Rose Nyamunga. You are.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also support the comments that have been made by my senior and from your chair, Mr. Speaker. But it is very clear that the issue of land, much as it was narrowed down to Mandera and then it comes from a particular ward, does not mean that the issue of land is not rampant in Kenya. Kenya, the issue of land and misallocations and reallocations is a very rampant thing and should be looked at. Maybe it's just the way it was put, but it's something that touches almost every ward and maybe many parts of this country. So I just want to support the people from Mandera, because this is not the first time that we are getting issues like it is in Nairobi. The other time it was in Kibera. A place was just burnt down because it was already allocated to different people, and then you realize that the people whose names are there are not the real owners of land. So this is a petition that touches all of us. It touches people in Kisumu. There are areas, even in Kanyakwar area, which was already, it has been allocated and reallocated to several people. Different people pay land rates, yet you realize that the land is not yours. So this is a matter that should be looked into, and it's a matter that touches in most parts of Kenya. And Mr. Speaker, the issue of corruption and issues of land has really affected many people, and it should be put to rest once and for all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, other members, I want to make a communication. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting students and teachers from Midiane Boys High School, Meru County. In our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. Senator Haji Farhia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also wish to join you in welcoming the boys from, I didn't hear the name. I also wish to contribute in terms of the land in Mandera. I think people being evicted haphazardly has become a norm in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, people will build land, do a lot of development, use their retirement to build a home, and then government comes and evicts them. Where was this government when these people were making this investment, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, these people have been paying government rates. I mean, according to the petition that was brought. If that is the case, then naturally that land belongs to them. So for somebody to come and wanting to evict them without compensation, I think is very unfair to those people, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I mean, people come to this house to seek justice. Sometimes in counties, there are bigger clans and smaller clans within certain counties. And sometimes, even within the bigger clans, there are small sub-clans that are marginalized. So, due respect to Super Senator, I just want you to understand the dynamics in those places. They will never get justice from the county assembly because probably none of them, they don't have any MCA in that county. So at the end of the day, nobody will take their issues to the next level. So they have every right to petition, Mr. Speaker, this house, so that this house is impartial, represented by 47 counties and nominated members who take care of the special interests. Therefore, I think it is their right to come and petition this house, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, because of those inequalities within counties, Mr. Speaker, that is why this House has passed a ward development fund to take care of those inequalities that exist within counties. And whichever clan that has the majority will always carry the day. So they cannot find justice within county assembly. And I want you to, Super Senator, to also understand that issue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
Senator Christopher Langat, what is your intervention?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to know from Senator Faria if we have super and minor or whatever senators. I thought we are all equal in this respect. Thank you.
Senator Faria, you may proceed to...
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for protecting me. Mr. Speaker, land is an emotive issue in this country, Mr. Speaker. And as population grows, Mr. Speaker, fight for land being one of the economic resource, I mean, in terms of development and all other issue, it's a contentious issue that unless there are laws and people who can protect people against losing their land, then this is also, and that is why people felt Senate is the right place for them to come. Mr. Speaker, I also want to support Senator Abshiro in terms of our land not being, people from northern Kenya, government grabbing land and people being displaced permanently. And because sometimes the literacy level in those counties are very high, sometimes they don't know their rights, and as a result, people just take them for granted. So I commend these people from Mandera for coming to this House for justice, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let us protect our electorates from whoever is grabbing their land and let them get justice, because everybody in this country deserves justice, and this is the house that they come for because of the wisdom in this house that they will get their rights, and therefore I think it is the right place, and whichever committee of land, if you commit this petition, Mr. Speaker, we want them to dispense with this issue with the justice that it deserves. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to contribute to this debate.
Senator Professor Ongeri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, we must recognize that land is a very emotive thing. And anything to do with land, being displaced from land, is in itself very emotive. And I suspect that the residents of this ward in Mandera County have gone through all manner of petitions until they have reached a level of no return. And they found out that the only recourse for their petitions to be heard is in this Senate. Because I know of what land means to every community, I'm persuaded, fully persuaded, Mr. Speaker, that this petition is properly before this House. And therefore, I think the best thing we can do is now to prosecute in the relevant committee the merits and the demerits of this petition, so that we give a correct ruling or correct results to the Mandera people and relieve them of this agony. They are already suffering of many other problems in that border county government. We have the Al-Shabaab harassing them, left, right, center. Now, added to this, there's this land problem coming on their way, disputes, and I would have expected when the big brother, in the name of the national government, comes in to harass the smaller brother, who is the county, and even smaller at the ward level, there's reason for us to look into it and find out the reasons why this harassment exists. And I think I submit to you, Mr. Speaker, on this House, that this is properly before this House, and I think we should prosecute it.
Senator Harugura Godana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I would like to support the petitioners in submitting that petition to this House because it's very clear that when the public's rights is being violated by the government, then they'll have to seek recourse where they think their grievances can be addressed, and that is this House. Mr. Speaker, from the way you read it, maybe there are many things we need to know from that petition. That is why we need to actually get the committee's work on it so that we know what actually happened. Because compulsory acquisition is a very clear process. It doesn't involve the government just going in and kicking out residents. There are very clear steps whereby if the government is interested in particular land, then in this case, if it's private, then it has to engage National Land Commission to acquire that land on behalf of the government, be it national or county. But in this case, what we are hearing is strange, and that is why we need to quickly get down to it. And as a member of the Lands Committee, I'd like to urge my colleagues that we have to make sure we treat with the urgency it deserves this kind of petitions, because Kenyans are suffering because of actions of the government, and we have to come in and make sure that things are done right. Thank you.
Senator Milgo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I wish to also support this petition from the people of Mandera County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it is recently when we also heard that some people from Menstrual County were evicted to pave way for security people in this country, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to actually evicting people from land, and in this case, eviction being carried out by a government, Mr. Speaker, I think this leaves a lot to be desired. Particularly, the government is supposed to take care of its own people, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, issues of land, as has already been said by my colleagues, is something very, very emotive. And I think this case is not only common in Mandera County, but in all other areas. I think this is very similar to the case of the Mao cases of eviction that has affected the people of Bomet County and Kericho counties, Mr. Speaker. When we talk about evicting people out of the land, they have been paying land rates, they have been living there for many years, it is in essence visiting those people with a lot of issues that are going to affect them. In most cases, those people are going to suffer economic issues, Mr. Speaker, in terms of houses being burned, their crops destroyed, schools in this case burned down, and when schools have been burned down, Mr. Speaker, it goes a long way to even affect the schooling of their children, Mr. Speaker. These cases, particularly like the case of the Mao, has actually affected our people for many years, and in most cases it has been used as a political tool to be able to aid again political mileage. And in some cases, there are some that has cheated on those people to vote on the promise that after the election, they shall be settled, Mr. Speaker. In this case, such an injustice.
Let's consult it, order members. Let's consult it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for saving me from such much noise. Such issues of land, Mr. Speaker, has even gone a long way in affecting our people, even in terms of health, because stresses of many years normally ends up.
Senator Pareno, what is your intervention?
Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether you heard Senator Milgo saying, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for saving me from such madness. No. I don't know whether that is what she said. If that is what she said, Mr. Speaker, I don't think there is any madness in this House, and I think she needs to withdraw that word.
I doubt what I mentioned. I said from such noise, Mr. Speaker. So I doubt what I mentioned. I can never tell my colleagues issues. How can my colleagues be told they are mad people? Okay, Mr. Speaker, before I was interrupted, I was saying issues of land has normally even affected our people in terms of health-related issues, Mr. Speaker, because of stress that have been subjected for many years as a result of being chased out of the land that they have otherwise occupied for many years, in terms of even having to lose what they have, in this case, invested in all their life. Mr. Speaker, sir, I feel that the Senate, as these people have faith in Senate, should be able to really take up this issue, and particularly the concerned committee should be able to take up this issue as a matter of urgency, and in this case, be able to bring on board the Land Commission, because actually the injustice begins with the Land Commission, Mr. Speaker, because those are the people that in this case have all the knowledge and information concerning all plans concerning placement, or in this case, sale and allocation of land, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, I support this particular petition. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Finally, Senator Mbito.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to add my voice in this petition and thank the residents of Baruako area for bringing this very, very important petition. And I would wish to assure them that this petition is in the right place and it will be given its due consideration. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you very much for your pronouncement that every Kenyan has a right to bring a petition to this House, and that the petition, they have a right to ensure that the petition is heard. It is rather unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that whereas we all support that position of everybody's right to bring in a petition here, it is rather unfortunate that when we leaders go out there, we go and have a different opinion. We actually have a situation where we have a double speak. We have a situation where when residents of Mount Elgon brought a petition to this House, one of our members in this House announced in a funeral and said that that petition is dead on arrival. I find that comment rather inflammatory and very, very unfortunate, because everybody has got a right to be heard, and when we go out there and incite the public against each other and term those petitions as dead on arrival, those are not statements that we should want to use as honorable members of this House. So I thank the residents for bringing this very important petition and assure them that it will be considered in due course. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 2321, the petition stands committed to the relevant standing committee, in this case, the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources. In terms of Standing Order 2322, the committee will be required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading the prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioners and laid on the table of the Senate. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers in the table of the Senate today, Thursday, 16 May 2019. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Kirinyaga County Executive Car Loan and Mortgage Fund for the year ended 30 June 2018. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Kirinyaga County Health Sector Service Fund for the year ended 30 June 2018. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Kirinyaga County Executive Emergency Fund for the year ended 30 June 2018. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Kirinyaga County Executive Bursary Fund for the year ended 30 June 2018. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Nyeri Water and Sewerage Company Limited for the year ended 30 June 2018. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Elgeyo Marakwet County Assembly Car Mortgage Revolving Fund for the year ended 30 June 2018. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Katanga Community Water Scheme for the year ended 30 June 2018. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Karuri Water and Sanitation Company Limited for the year ended 30 June 2018. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Kilifi County Ward Scholarship Fund for the year ended 30 June 2018. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the Mombasa Water Supply and Sanitation Company Limited for the year ended 30 June 2018. And the report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of
Tavevo Water and Sewerage Company Limited for the year ended 30th June 2018. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order. Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements.
Honorable Senators, I therefore defer order Senator Abshiro. You have this. Okay. So this one is okay. Proceed, lead of majority.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to ask for your indulgence. I give my statement first so that I can attend to another meeting that is in relation to my responsibility as majority leader. If you don't mind.
Proceed, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I, pursuant to Standing Order 52.1, I hereby present to the Senate the business of the House of the week commencing Tuesday, 21st May 2019. I take this opportunity to welcome you back from the 31 days recess. I hope you enjoyed the time spent with family, friends, and your constituents. During the recess, the Senate also participated in the annual Legislative Summit 2019 in Kisumu County. I thank all senators who attended and participated in the various levels in the summit. Honorable Senators, subject to further directions of the Senate Business Committee, the Senate will consider bills due for second reading and committee of the whole on Tuesday, 21st May 2019. The Senate will also continue with the consideration of business that will not be concluded in today's order paper. On Wednesday, 22nd May 2019 and Thursday, 23rd May 2019, the Senate will consider business that will not be concluded on Tuesday and any other business scheduled by the Senate Business Committee. Before we proceed on recess, I informed the House that there are several bills before the House on second reading and committee of the whole stage. There are also a number of statements and petitions pending before the standing committees. I urge the respective standing committee to ensure that the process of consideration of the said business is expedited during the recess period and table reports on them upon resumption of sittings in May 2019. You may note that we have 35 bills pending at the Committee of the Whole. Honorable Senators, I therefore once again appeal to the committees to take appropriate measures. This will facilitate the House to enrich the debate on the second reading stage and also effectively navigate the Committee of the Whole stage of the bills. I thank you and hereby lay the statement on the table of the House. Thank you.
Senator Abshiro Laki.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Order 47.1, I rise to make a statement on operationalization of the menstrual hygiene management policy. Honorable Speaker, in early 2017, the Ministry of Health developed the National Menstrual Hygiene Management Policy and Strategy with support from non-governmental organizations, the private sector, and including various experts. The policy was an initiative by the national government to break the silence on menstruation and provide more adequate services to girls and women in our country. However, the policy has not been made operational, therefore, which raises the question as to why this has not yet been done to mainstream. Mr. Speaker, I have a bill that is being prepared whereby I'm trying to ensure that we zero rate the local production of sanitary towels. Mr. Speaker, it's very unfair for this country to tax women because they're menstruating. It's unfair because this is a biological function that the women have no control over, and therefore we would like to make sure that all aspects that regard management of the menstrual hygiene is operationalized. Given that Article 21, 1 and 2 of the Constitution impose an obligation on the state and every state organ to observe, to respect, to protect, to promote, and fulfill the rights and fundamental freedoms set out in the Bill of Rights, further, the state is required to legislate policies and other measures, including setting of standards aimed at ensuring the rights as guaranteed under Article 43 of the Constitution are progressively realized. The economic and social rights as contained in the Constitution reflects the rights as set out in international covenants of economic, social, and cultural rights. Honorable Speaker, the policy examines the prevailing social, economic, cultural, and demographic context for menstrual health for women and girls, including implications for consequences to their health. Honorable Speaker, menstrual hygiene management is closely linked to the rights to health care, to education, to water, to sanitation and hygiene, and a healthy and clean environment for all, and therefore the policy has a section that these rights are addressed within the existing regulatory environment of our country and of our Constitution. Honorable Speaker, in addition, the policy has outlined principles, objectives, and priority areas for the management of menstrual health, the management and coordination, and providing services, roles, and responsibilities for different stakeholders. Honorable Speaker, highlighting that some of the action plans will help out in managing the menstrual health, such as reviewing of existing standards and guidelines for wash facilities in public places, workplaces, correctional facilities, and healthcare facilities, to undertake menstrual health management as a rights-based intervention for all, with emphasis to hard-to-reach areas and humanitarian situations and people with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, this policy was to ensure access to clear, correct information and knowledge available on options for managing menstruation, ensure that women and girls have access to a range of menstrual hygiene management products, and to ensure that counties include menstrual health management in their county integrated development plan and county health strategic plans, and have a dedicated budgetary allocation for menstrual and hygiene health. Honorable Speaker, even though the policy is a good initiative to curb the problems women and girls are facing during their menstruation, it needs to be revised and have pragmatic steps or activities to achieve the objectives and action plans in the policy. I believe the policy should not be in academic research paper, but be a pragmatic strategy or framework that can be implemented, which will bring out the results we seek. It is a concern, Mr. Speaker, that these policies, laws, strategies are developed in the country, but honored more in breach than in practice. Mr. Speaker, we have so many good laws, we have so many good policies, but all these are just gathering dust on our shelves. And now, for me to be able to move forward with the bill to zero-rate pads and sanitary towels and tampons in this country, which is a gross violation of the rights of women to have access to menstrual health, we need this policy to be operationalized so that then we start the whole issue about zero rating of menstrual health products, because women should not be made to pay for menstruation, which is a biological function over which they do not have a control. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Judith Pareno.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Education regarding the total paralysis in learning activities in Mashuru Sub-County, Kajiado County, resulting from the interdiction of 58 teachers for alleged opposition to the competency-based curriculum. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain the circumstances under which the Teacher Service Commission, TSC, interdicted 58 of the 134 teachers in Mashuru Sub-County with a serious ripple effect to neighboring regions within Kajiado County, and provide a list of the interdicted teachers. 2, show proof that the interdicted teachers were opposed to the introduction of the competency-based curriculum as alleged. 3, Mr. Speaker, we want the committee to clarify whether the teachers were given a hearing prior to the interdiction, considering that many of the teachers, some of whom were on sick leave or maternity leave, received their interdiction letters before the period provided to respond to letters to show cause had lapsed. 4, the committee should state what urgent measures the national and county governments are taking to deal with the matter, and also ensure that normal learning activities are restored in the sub-county, considering that 22 of the victims are head teachers and all the schools have candidates who need to be prepared for the 2019 KCPE. And 5, to state what plans the government has in the long term to address the shortage of teachers in the county, and in the short term to address the dire need of the schools affected by the interdiction, particularly a school called AIC Ilmungush, a school called Selengei Primary, Olmeleleki Primary, and Naretoi schools, each of which had 4 or less TSC teachers, and all of whom have now been interdicted.
Senator Gertrude Musuruve.
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you for giving me an opportunity to add my voice on this particular statement. And I want to commend Senator Pareno for coming up with this statement, because this statement actually is a county-wide matter. The issue of the competency-based curriculum has been an issue that has been debated many times. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the fact that 58 teachers were interdicted, that is already an issue of great concern that we as a Senate need to really seriously interrogate and find out why were they, was there any need for them to be interdicted?
Order, Senator Kangata.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your indulgence. Mr. Speaker, what I'm saying is that there is no rationale for interdicting 58 teachers. By the time 58 teachers are being interdicted, it really has a direct impact on learners' performance. It has direct impact not only on the learners' performance, also on the teachers' performance, Mr. Speaker. And it has also psychosocial impact that is not positive but negative. And Mr. Speaker, even from this statement, those teachers who are on sick leave were also interdicted. Those who are on maternity leave were also interdicted, meaning that they were not given an audience. They were not even given time to appear and really air their views out. And Mr. Speaker, even from this statement, 22 schools have no head teacher. And Mr. Speaker, a head teacher has an important role to play in a school. So in this statement, there are 22 schools without head teachers. So if 22 teachers were arrested, it means that there are 22 schools without direction, there are 22 schools without a head, there are 22 schools without knowing really where to go and all that. Mr. Speaker, it is really unthinkable for a school to be without a head, because a deputy cannot really play the role of a head, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that the issue of divergent opinion should not warrant an arrest. Mr. Speaker, interdiction. Mr. Speaker, if people have divergent opinion, it is very good for the opinions to be brought on board and see whether the opinions hold water or not. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that instilling fear for the purpose of effecting a policy or a program cannot work, Mr. Speaker. When people work in fear, it cannot go very far. So it is illogical, it is not sustainable, and it is not well thought, Mr. Speaker, and this is something that the Committee of Education, where I sit, should really interrogate with speed and even insist that the TSC should come and really answer questions to the Senate why actually these teachers were interdicted. And Mr. Speaker, when it comes to change, change should be accepted by people. Change should be people-driven. Change should be owned by people. But if change is not owned by people and it is being done and being forced through people's throats, it can never work, Mr. Speaker. So there's need for us to really intervene as a Senate and see how to really, resolve the issue. And Mr. Speaker, even when the 844 system was being started, of course there were teething problems. And even though there were teething problems, these problems were eventually ironed out. There was consensus, and it went out clearly, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that, yes, a system is being put in place, but we have to really interrogate and see, is this system for the better or for the worse? So there's need for the ministry, there's need for TSC to accept, divergent the issues. And Mr. Speaker, even as we are talking of this interdiction, there are also people who are arraigned in court, teachers. Mr. Speaker, there is need for the this statement to go to the Education Committee and the Education Committee to seriously intervene in this issue for the purpose and for the sake of our children in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Professor Margaret Kamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this petition, in support of the petition that has been given by Senator Barreno, and I want to thank her for highlighting this issue. Mr. Speaker, I am not worried about interdiction because TSC has the powers to interdict and they have done it for a very long time. My greatest worry is the victim, who is a student. These students are victims of quarrels between grown-ups. These are children who are victims of quarrels between a ministry and a union, between a ministry and teachers who have disobeyed. Mr. Speaker, interdicting a teacher does not mean that you have sent the teacher away from Kenya. If we need to interdict that number of teachers, I think the ministry should have planned. TSC should have planned properly to ensure that we don't have students or classrooms without children, without teachers. Because currently, there are so many schools that do not have teachers because of a carelessness in not planning. Mr. Speaker, mine is that the issue is if the ministry is going to discipline these people, and eventually they decide they're going to pay them their salaries, as they've always done, because conflicts between the ministry, between TSC and NAT, are almost predictable, because they have always been won by NAT as a union. If the union wins, the victim remains the child. Mr. Speaker, I think the TSC should plan differently, that the students should not be victims of a situation like this, so that the conflicts between the union and the TSC should have been handled differently. In my opinion, Mr. Speaker, the teaching should have continued while they are dealing with the process. And if the teaching would have continued, they would have even dealt with them during the holiday of April, instead of victimizing. Alternatively, they should have hired other teachers, because there is nowhere they're going anyway, they're still around. They would have hired other teachers before doing the suspension. We have had cases where teachers are not even teachers who are guilty of situations. We have had cases where teachers have mishandled children, rape cases, and people have been paying their salaries and nobody has interdicted them in a hurry, in the great hurry that we are seeing. I think the ministry should really reconsider the approach that they're using, because having a child in school as a victim of a situation that they cannot control is not correct and it's not right. And it's very important that the children having to go through the same kind of examination at the end of the year or at the end of their 8 years should be treated equally. The right of those children has been violated, Mr. Speaker. And I think it is time that we protected such situations. There has to be a different way of punishing a guilty teacher. And TSC must really have a different way of dealing with these issues. Alternatively, they distribute the teachers, redistribute teachers from other schools so that we don't have schools that are victimized, because now they are not victimizing the teacher, they are victimizing us, the children. Mr. Speaker, I think the committee should be able to handle this properly, and we need to have a proposal that would come out of the committee, out of the discussions between the committee and TSC, which will never bring this kind of situation again in the country. Because it is really embarrassing. It is a shame that we are making children suffer because of pride between two groups that cannot discuss, that cannot talk to themselves. Mr. Speaker, I support this request for statement, and I believe we'll be able to handle it even at the committee stage properly. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting students and teachers from Moi Primary School, Nakuru County. In our usual traditions of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on my behalf, and on behalf of the Senate, and on my own behalf, wish them fruitful visit. I thank you. Senator Mutula Kilonzo, Jr.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise to support the statement. Yesterday, I mentioned that 14 teachers from Makueni have been interdicted from Kibwezi. They have gone to court. They have not only been interdicted, they have been charged for causing what they are calling mayhem.
What's it, Senator Sharagay?
I was requesting that because of the interest that this matter has generated, maybe you can limit the time, but not from you can allow Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. to proceed, but all of us should at least, so that at least we can contribute. I don't know why Senator Adama is shouting over the floor. I think he's not the speaker.
Order, Senator, you've made your point. Order, proceed as Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr.
And Speaker, you should have protected me from Senator for Muranga. Mr. Speaker, something is wrong about the way the executive is running everything. Everything. I was in a meeting over the weekend when a chief stood up and told the old women who are collecting the money they collect every 6 months that that money will not be paid unless they take the Huduma number. Is that a correct position, really? It's not. Because the court has said that this is not compulsory. We have been told by 18th you must register. What about the person who is in school, the child who is in school, like my own daughter, somebody who's in hospital, somebody who is in America, etc., etc.? What is supposed to happen? Same thing is happening with this. The same people we are interdicting are the same people who are supposed to teach. How can policy become forceful? What happened to public participation? I'm not sure, I can't see the chair of education, but in terms of education, Mr. Speaker, I think we need to, all of us, sit as the House of Wisdom together with the ministry and reason with the ministry and tell them, this is our country. You are hurting our children. You are hurting our teachers. It's the same teachers who campaigned for this government are the same teachers who have been interdicted. For what? Not refusing to teach, not going to school. It's just questioning, why are you training? And yet we haven't participated. We take pride in saying Article 10, public participation. Leaders and senators, you are not speaking enough about the lack of public participation on the Huduma number, on this curriculum, and many other things that national government is doing which appear to be forceful. That old woman, 95-year-old, who is only getting 2,000 shilling, is told, if you don't get a number, you will not get that money. 58 teachers interdicted from a county like Kajiado. In every essence, any person who is teaching in Kajiado is teaching in a hardship zone where they should get a hardship allowance. And then you interdict 58 of them. Because we want to force everything. But the things that we should do, like laptops, we just dump them in school. And that is forgotten. Article 129, executive authority shall be exercised in a manner compatible with principles of service to the people of Kenya and for their well-being and benefit. Do we need to remind this government that the principles of well-being and benefit to this country is also in the Bible, in the book of Isaiah? Come and sit, we reason together on everything. We are not, the same thing is happening in Kitui about the road. And that is the reason I objected to the land index bills that suggested that Kenyans should leave their land and be paid after 2 years. Somebody in Kajiado has not been paid, they have been evicted by the Chinese. Somebody in Kitui, their graves have been dug, they have been evicted, and have been told we'll pay you at a later date. My dear colleagues, if we don't defend Kenyans, even your own parents, your own brothers will face the wrath of the same government that we seem not to be able to talk to. Because I'm surprised that the government of Kenya is behaving as if it's in a bad mood, or it woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Something is wrong. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
To the statement by the distinguished Senator Pareno. Mr. Speaker, I want to give free advice to Professor Magoha, a gentleman with a very long CV, showing his distinction in academia, and everybody believes that he has the ability to run the Ministry of Education and make a difference. Mr. Speaker, Professor Magoha should enter that office knowing that it has had the highest turnover of ministers in the Jubilee government, and that he may also be walking through a revolving door. Mr. Speaker, when Professor Magoha came into office, the first thing he said was that he has no reverse gear. And nobody had asked him whether he had any gears. That once he takes a trajectory, that is it. Yesterday, he said anybody who stands in the way of the new curriculum, he will crush him. That is not how to run public affairs, Mr. Speaker. And that is not how to behave in present-day Kenya. Mr. Speaker, 58 teachers have been interdicted in Kajiado. In Bungoma, they arrested all the heads of KNUT who had simply gone to schools where tuition was being carried out to ask the teachers, are you ready for this tuition? We as your leaders in KNUT. They arrested them, locked them up, bungled them in court, and charged them with all manner of spurious offenses, Mr. Speaker. We had to rally to bond them. This is not how to run a ministry. And Mr. Speaker, a county like Kajiado suffers from a serious deficit of teachers. Serious deficit. And the few that are there, you dismember them from teaching. And at the end of the year, the children of Kajiado are going to sit exams with children from State House Girls, from Mary Leakey, from all this McKinney School, all these schools in Nairobi. And at the end of the day, they have to be graded equally. And at the end of the day, you tell them those who got D+ will not go to colleges. This is not right, Mr. Speaker. Is this working now? So I want to join Senator Pareno in demanding, Mr. Speaker, that this is actually a matter of very urgent national importance. That in addition to Kajiado, there are many, many parts of the country where teachers are being terrorized and harassed for simply raising questions. Because when you ask a question, you deserve an answer. You don't deserve being harassed, interdicted, and locked up with the charges on your head in court. So I want to urge the Committee of Education, I don't see the chairman here, Dr. Langat, that this is a matter, Mr. Speaker, that should not wait for even 2 days. That they should have the Minister for Education come before the committee as early as tomorrow. And demand on him that even as he answers questions, all the charges preferred against teachers for raising questions be dropped forthwith and conditionally, and those who have been interdicted be lifted to go back to school and help the children of this country. Mr. Speaker, otherwise, if we go this route, we're creating a situation where we get people unhappy, we get people angry, we get people to revolt, and we can cause discomfort in the country for no reason, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I want to bring to your attention Standing Order number 46 that reads, notwithstanding Standing Order 40, there shall be time to be designated as statement hour every sitting day, commencing at not less than 3 p.m. and ending not later than 4 p.m., and during which a statement under this part may be made. Honorable Senators, I give 1 minute, 2 minutes each for a senator who may wish to contribute on this matter. Senator Oledama.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you for the minute to contribute on this matter. Sometimes Mr. Speaker, sir, I really feel sad and I feel sorry for the young Kenyans who are born in rural areas, who deserve, as Article 43. What? What is the point of order?
Order, Senator. Order, Senator. Order, Senator Kangata. Senator Kangata, on the screen here, I don't see your intervention. Order, Senator Kangata. You're already standing. I've not given you a chance to say your order. Proceed, Senator Olekina.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you. Mr. Speaker, sir, before I was interrupted, I first rise to support the statement by Senator Pareno. And it's about time that we really come back to our senses as a country. The most important thing that you can do is to, if you want to destroy the future of a young person, is to really mess with their teachers. The teachers of this country teach in very deplorable conditions. Mr. Speaker, sir, interdicting teachers because they say they are not comfortable, or rather you allege that they oppose the curriculum-based, the competent-based curriculum, and now you give reasons to deny children of this country, who the Constitution clearly states that they have a right to an education, is really totally misguided. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it's about time that we in this House, as we are talking about the issue of a referendum, think about how we are going to devolve the issue of education. Because it is sad when some people in this capital city of Kenya called Nairobi sit and decide to deny a child in Mashuru, a child in Eselengei in Kajiado County, an opportunity to go to school. What Magoha and the TSC do not realize is that young girls will end up getting pregnant, young boys will end up going out there because they will not have people to help them learn. There are schools, Mr. Speaker, sir, in Kajiado, where in a ward called, I think, Ilmoro, where there's not a single teacher. Ilmaroro, there's not a single teacher.
What is it, Senator Kangata?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm rising pursuant to Standing Order 98 sub-article 2, which I read. 1, subject to paragraph 5, no senator shall refer to any matter which is sub judice or which by the operation of any written law is secret to. A matter shall be considered to be sub judice when it refers to active criminal and civil proceedings and the discussion of such matter is likely to prejudice its fair determination. And 3, in determining whether criminal or civil proceeding is alive, the following shall apply. A, criminal proceedings shall be deemed to be active when a charge has been made or someone to appear has been issued. B, criminal proceedings shall be deemed to have ceased to be active when they are concluded by verdict and sentence or discontinuance. Mr. Speaker, it is public knowledge that the teachers, subject matter of this petition or this discussion, have a criminal case which is currently pending in court. Surely, if we proceed discussing this matter, when this matter is still active, witnesses have not given it evidence, I think we shall be flouting this law. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, Senator Kajwang.
Mr. Speaker, the good senator for Moranga, who is a well-known lawyer representing Kenyans in American courts, ought to have read that standing order up to Standing Order 98.4. A senator alleging that a matter is sub judice shall provide evidence to show that paragraphs 2 and 3 are applicable, and saying that it is public knowledge is not enough, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senators. Senator Kangata, you produced the evidence, otherwise you may withdraw the statement, the order, your standing, the order paper you've made. Your order, your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, either two things. One, you take what we call parliamentary notice of what is happening. It is in public realm. But in the event, in the unlikely event you refuse to adopt that, I give a pledge that on or before Tuesday next week, I will have tabled those documents. Thank you.
Proceed, Senator Watangula.
I want to join Senator Kajwang and point out to my distinguished learned junior that he's a well-known lawyer in this country, and he knows that Standing Order 98 does not operate in a vacuum. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I want to refer him and the chair to the rulings of Speaker Marende and the recent ruling by our Deputy Speaker, to the effect that a mere fact that a case is in court, assuming that he's even right that a case is in court, does not get prejudiced because it's mentioned. And that, Mr. Speaker, judges of this country and magistrates are so well trained that they cannot suffer prejudice simply because somebody has stood up in the Senate and mentioned that there's a case in court. We can't be that simplistic, Mr. Speaker, and I want to urge that you rule him out of order and give him no opportunity to produce anything because there's nothing to produce.
Senator Cheriot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it will serve best. I want to agree with my colleagues who have spoken before me that what Senator Kangata is pursuing is an exercise in futility because seated on the chair that you're seated, Mr. Speaker, a few months ago, the Deputy Speaker of the Senate made a very detailed ruling about this particular issue after a matter that generated perhaps far more heat than this particular one. And therefore, I do not know, I know Senator Kangata occasionally walks in and out of the Senate. Therefore, it will do him more justice if he, one, sits down and follows the proceedings of the House. Secondly, takes time to read copies of the Hansard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr.
Mr. Speaker, the question of sub judice has been discussed. In fact, the last time the Senator Abshiro had a French interpretation or French pronunciation for the benefit of my good friend Senator Irungu Kangata, a ruling, substantive ruling issued in the case of Solai. And even then, there was no, in your case, you don't have a court case number, you don't have pleadings, you have not tabled anything. The parties and the issue that is sub judice, as far as I'm concerned, you just want to cause chaos and mayhem in the House, or maybe just to be heard. But otherwise, you have no point. Could you, Mr. Speaker, rule him out of order on the basis of previous rulings of this House? Thank you.
What is it, Senator Pareno? The last point of order.
Mr. Speaker, is Senator Kangata in order? First of all, Senator Kangata just walked in and started making noise before he even heard what we were contributing to. He rushed to inform this House that there is a court order, there is a court proceeding in this matter. Is he in order to mislead this honorable chamber that actually there are court proceedings on this matter? I want to say that as the senator who has read this statement, who is also a lawyer like him, I am aware that there is no existing court proceedings in the matter that concerns Mashuru sub-county, which is my sub-county and where I live, and I know there is no such order. such proceeding? Is he in order to mislead this court? I think he was just trying to find a way to be relevant, having been away from this house for so long, and when he comes in, the only thing he does is to distract the proceedings that are going on.
Order, senators, honorable senators. Standing order number 98 is very clear, as stated by honorable senators who have stood on point of orders, and we therefore rule Senator Kangata out of order. Proceed, Senator Ledama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm devastated because I would have expected my good friend Kangata to stand here and support the children of this country. But in this case, he appears to be with some people who think that the only way to be able to bring sanity is through dictatorship. Mr. Speaker, sir, insubordination is being taken, is being defined in all different manners. The reason why those teachers were interdicted is only because they said, we really do not agree with this. Does it, and we don't understand it, does it mean that when you don't agree with something, it has to be pushed down through your throat for you to be able to understand it? Mr. Speaker, sir, we have to be serious in this country. And this is why I'm saying, when it comes to the issue of us going through a referendum, it is about time that we now seriously think about what aspects of devolution do we want to promote. When it comes to education, the only thing which is fully devolved is early childhood education. But the children of Mashuru, Mr. Speaker, say if you go to a Selenge, yesterday I saw a teacher who decided, okay, let me now go take care of my cows, because these poor kids who, even the conditions that they learn in, I mean, they're so deplorable. This teacher who earns peanuts has gone there just to be able to change a life so that he can be remembered when, you know, by the time that he's alive. Mr. Speaker, sir, this house must defend children of this nation. They must defend the teachers. If you force those teachers to go there and learn, the argument being made, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that in Kajiado, it's only 55% of the teachers who have adopted these competency-based curricula. If the rest do not understand, take the time to be able to teach them, let them understand, let them buy in. If there's no buy-in, it will end up being those big white elephant projects which were built in this country many years ago, and no one supported them. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I hope that the Committee on Education will take this matter seriously, so that we can be able to protect the future of this nation.
Senator Sakaja.
Mr. Speaker, just two issues. I'm really at pains to understand what is going on with this government. Mr. Speaker, I feel that there are elements in certain areas of government, because I know the president very well, who are actually undercutting, undermining, and sabotaging the work he's doing. And yesterday I said, on the matter of education, I'm happy that my former VC and my good friend Magoa is now on that seat, because I know he's a man of reasoning. But Mr. Speaker, on the first issue, why is the government acting as if it is at war with its people? Are we fighting Kenyans? What is going on? Senator Nyamunga, I am a senator like you. Today there's this tax. Tomorrow you're telling people 1.5 housing, you must pay, or else, by force. Tomorrow you're telling car dealers, you must only bring vehicles 5 years and under. Hundreds of young people are employed in these dealerships. People cannot afford, or else. Tomorrow take this number, or else. It's threatening Kenyans. You ask a question, you're arrested. You're taken to court, and then you expect you tomorrow to go teach those children. There is something fundamentally wrong. And I think certain ministers came in and said, oh, for you to be popular, you must be tough. So let us all be tough, like this one. And no. You're not dealing with children in this country. We have houses of reason. We have Kenyans are sensible people. When Kenyans were told, let's ban paper bags because of this, in a day, we stopped. So don't threaten people. Don't threaten Kenyans. Reason with Kenyans. And let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll tell those who are listening in government, when you stir a hornet's nest, be prepared for the sting. Yes. Kenyans are frustrated. There's a way things can be done. All of these things are good, but there's a way they can actually be done. It's the process. It is not even the content. It is the manner in which these things are being unpackaged to Kenyans. Somebody must look at that. But number two, Mr. Speaker, on this issue, we are not interested in the fight between the ministry and NAT. The ministry will come and go, the minister will come and go. Sosion will be there and will go, Mr. Speaker. Our issue, and we feel very strongly, Mr. Speaker, that the Education Committee in this House is doing us a disservice. We want to hear about the competency-based curriculum vis-a-vis the outcome-based curriculum. We need a session in this House that tells us what has happened in other countries that are moved from outcome-based to competency-based. Because they're two very different things, Mr. Speaker. In CBE, we're talking about concrete skills as opposed to abstract learning. You're talking about going at the pace of the learner. You're talking about, Mr. Speaker, mastery of specific skills. But on outcome-based, and I'm finishing, I know my time is up. On outcome-based, Mr. Speaker, or even it's called performance-based, it is around what is essential for every student to have achieved by a certain time, Mr. Speaker. That is a discussion we must have. Let us not delve into the non-issues of the personality problems or personal character issues of Sosion and Magoha. Let's talk about the future of millions of young Kenyans as we move and shift from competency-based. It was introduced in Malaysia, in Rwanda. There are case studies around the world so that we can make a reasoned decision and interaction, which only the Senate can do. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge you to direct that the Education Committee actually calls a committee of the whole. Because this is a fundamental education. I mean, if you're not talking, what else are you talking about? A committee of the whole for us to be taken through what is this competency-based and why do you want us to move to it? Do we have the resources as a country to move at the pace of each and every learner? Because you must assess everybody's competence as they start. And what is the merit or demerit of outcome-based? And then we make a reasoned decision. But let's leave the sideshows of Sosion and NAT and Kupet. Those ones do not matter. They will not hold. They have no bearing on eternity and on the future of our children, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Morgan. You will go on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise in support of the statement that has been requested by my good friend, Senator Pareno. But, Madam Speaker, I think the case we have at hand is a very clear indication of an institution by the name Teacher Service Commission that has gone berserk, that is an expression of an institution that wants to become a lord of impunity, Mr. Speaker. Article 47 of the Constitution states that every person has a right to an administrative action that is lawful, that is reasonable, and procedurally fair. What I've heard from the senator, from our nominated senator, is that TSC has proceeded to interdict teachers even before the period provided to respond to the letters to show cause had elapsed. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, this is an indication of an institution that does not even want to respect our own constitution. And I think I want to urge this House to invoke the provisions of Article 251 of the Constitution. If we have people who occupy state offices who don't want to respect the Constitution, then we should invoke Article 251 and push for their removal from office, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker. And Article 251 provides that an holder of an independent office may be removed from office for contravention of this Constitution or for gross misconduct. It's an act of gross misconduct, Mr. Speaker, for somebody to interdict teachers even before they are given an opportunity to respond to any accusations that they are facing. I don't think this is the way we should run business, and you can see the lamentations from our friends from Jubilee. You heard what the majority leader said the other day. You have heard what Senator Sakaja has said today. Why should they allow these office holders to taint the already tainted name of Jubilee? This is not... So, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker.
What is it, Senator Sakaja?
Mr. Speaker, is a senator from Nyamira Senior Council in order to try and score cheap political goals by bringing up the name of Jubilee and ODM, while in this House, Mr. Speaker, on issues of national interest, we have always moved in a bipartisan and united manner. Because if you now make this about Jubilee and NASA, then we all retreat into our corners, Mr. Speaker. This one, Mr. Speaker, and please advise him, is about the children of this country. It's not about Jubilee. It's not about ODM or NASA. It's about our children and our future. So please, those political goals we can score over the weekend.
Thank you, Senator Sakaja. Yeah. Proceed, Senator Omogen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did not invite Senator Sakaja to make lamentations about his own party Jubilee, and he heard what the majority leader said the other day. So in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I think this is a matter that is serious, and this is the chairman of the Education Committee is in the House. I think we need to evaluate and relook at the conduct of the head of TSC, especially how he is treating teachers. Just this morning, I saw some reports on social media that teachers from Kitui had just obtained a court order, 157 of them, a court order reinstating them back to office. I mean, this is a waste of public funds, Mr. Speaker. If we allow TSC to disregard the law, the Constitution, and then people go to court, they get orders, they are taken back to office, who is going to meet all these legal costs? I think this is abuse of office. We should call a spade, and it's high time that serious action was taken against the head of Teacher Service Commission. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Naomi Wako, 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to support the statement, and it is quite clear that the Ministry of Education is not giving any attention to our children because they seem not to be concerned with the future of our children. What they have done is affecting our children's performance. This is the second term of the year where our children need to be very, concentrating a lot on their book, but they are not doing that. They are affecting the parents because the poor parents have provided for all the needs, and now the children are not getting what they want. Sometimes I wonder why we should tell our young people that education is the only way to success. Because for Kenyans, the opposite is happening. We have many graduates. We have ruined their futures by interfering with the education system here and there. And anybody who is put in the position, you can clearly see that they have their own agenda and they want to push for that. Mr. Speaker, last night I watched Professor Magoha and his people. And from the body language, you can see that there is a lot of war going on. And unless, as Senate, we take action, our children will continue suffering. And so I suggest that proper evaluation be done and we take the necessary measures that needs to be taken so that our children, the parents, and the teachers of this country will not continue suffering. And we need to understand that this is a mere allegation. And I wonder why the Ministry of Education has taken the step they took and has taken that unnecessary action that is irrelevant to our nation. Thank you.
Senator Rose Nyamunga.
Thank you, Mr. Not yet.
It's working.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I think mine is very brief. I would like to say that change is very critical. Any level of life, you may want to change things from time to time, and even changing the curriculum. When we were going into 844, I think we had almost the same experience. And after so many years, I think almost 20, 30 years, we are changing the curriculum again. It is not bad. And normally change also comes with a lot of resistance, which is also generally understood. But my issue here, Mr. Speaker, is so simple. How can a whole sub-county in Kajiado have only 127 teachers? A whole sub-county. That one is starvation of the first order. So I don't disagree with the issue with the teachers, because if you want to stop something, you don't wait until the time for implementation, then you go and disrupt. That is not allowed. If you have issues, I think there was a procedure and a process that must have been taken before rolling out this particular program. but you don't go disrupting. So I don't have a problem with that. But the problem I have is how do we starve children of teachers? Even if you leave alone these 55 of them who are interdicted, 127 teachers in a whole sub-county with several schools, a vast county like Kajiado, that to me is very, very serious and should be treated with the seriousness that it deserves. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You can use the dispatch. And our dispatch. Use the dispatch.
Mr. Speaker, this country must also have discipline. You cannot have a country where this whole Senate here is speaking from both ends of the mouth. You know, let's face it. I saw some unionists going to disrupt, teaching classes for the new curriculum. I mean, people have freedom of assembly. Picketing is allowed. But you can't just go and find people being taught, and then you are removing them. You want to beat them. I mean, it's totally unacceptable. So Magoha, go on. I personally want to support Professor Magoha. And we need to check. Let's not just come here and be populist. We need to check whether the due procedure of interdiction and the TSC policy was followed. But we cannot have a country that is reckless. You may beg to differ. There is no system that is perfect, Mr. Speaker. We have had KCPE or 844 system for the last 33 years. Some of us, in fact, most of us here may be beneficiaries. But there must be a way in which you must raise your grievances. Mr. Speaker, Professor Magoha has said very clearly, don't keep on barking and yapping. Give us your alternative. And your alternative cannot be violence. You know, your alternative cannot be that you now come and tell us because the Kajiado County doesn't only have 127 teachers. I know we would want to secure some bunker points, but we must have some law and order in this country. And we cannot be bashing zealous government officers who are willing and ready to push the agenda forward. Amina Mohammed went out of that ministry because she gave conflicting signals about this. So Nancy Macharia, Professor Magoha, you may be the minority, you must stand for this country. And any teacher who is going to disrupt other teachers from learning must be taken care of properly and discipline properly administered.
Order, Honorable Senators. As I've already noted that we are past statement hour, I kindly request the Chairman of Education, Senator Dr. Langat, to make the last contribution to this statement. Order, Honorable Senators. Senator Langat, proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for actually, thank you for giving me this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to make my contribution. And I want to say that, protect me, Mr. Speaker, from Cherarge.
Order, Honorable Senators. Proceed, Senator Langat.
I want to say I don't, personally, in this particular era, I don't support dictatorship and the intimidation of any professional person. The idea that these particular teachers actually were interdicted has demoralized teachers in this particular country. And I tend to think that the Teacher Service Commission could have used a more civilized way on the approach of this particular training to actually motivate these teachers. As the committee, we are going to act accordingly and make sure that reason come to this particular country. I want to say also, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this House should protect the citizen of this country against rushed policies. We were told very well that digital learning process is a very important thing to this country. When we were last week in Eldoret, Mr. Speaker, sir, we realized that Moi University, which is is doing a sampling of these particular catchets, is producing 1,350 catchets every day. And we were told that the 6 counties have been supplied 100%. And then at last, we asked the county director from Wazingishu to take us to 2 model schools, which he tend to think that they are perfect. We were taken to 2 primary schools, and to the shock of each one of us, Mr. Speaker, we found that a school by the name Leleit has only 13 catchets against 30 pupils in standard 2, and only one teacher is literate in that school concerning the digital literacy. And those computers, the 13, only 6 were working. And it took 30 minutes for each and every computer to come into operation. So I want to say it's a waste of government money, and we were told that around 30 billion has been injected into the production and supply. But implementation, there is nothing going on. The training of those particular teachers, nothing is going on. So I want to say this House should stand, and we shall stand as a committee to make sure that at least these rushed particular policies, which is eating up a lot of money from the taxpayers, must actually be checked. And I want also to say we are dealing with a situation, Mr. Speaker, which is so hard. We are dealing with a professor. With me, I've taught in university for 10 years, and I've known professors to be humble and people who can consult. But we are dealing with a professor that I'm sorry to say, he said he has no reverse gear, forward ever, backward never, despite irrespective of the things that are happening. So I want to say, protect me, Mr. Speaker, sir. We are going to...
Order, Honorable Senator. Senator Langat, you need to conclude your...
So I want to say, as the committee chair, we are going to make sure that I even request, as Sakaja was saying, Senator Sakaja was saying, we even involve the committee of the whole so that this matter is really resolved properly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, statement pursuant to Standing Order number 48-1, Statement C, statement by Honorable Senator Judith Pareno, stand committed to the Committee of Education. Honorable Senators, statements under pursuant to Standing Order number 48-1, Statement A and B are therefore deferred. Statement pursuant to Standing Order number 51, 1B, A, B, C, D, E, F are deferred. Next order. What's it, Senator Sakaja?
Thank you. Mr. Speaker,
Order, Senator Uta.
Mr. Speaker, I'd earlier sought your indulgence.
Proceed, Senator Sakaja, on the statement that was issued yesterday regarding the security situation in Kakamega County.
Kakamega County.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, Senator for Kakamega raised a statement directed to the Committee of National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations with respect to killings that have happened in Kakamega County. Mr. Speaker, I just want to give the commitment, because yesterday the chair and the vice chair of the committee were not there. Just a commitment by a committee that we're taking this very seriously. We're well informed that yesterday the members of parliament, including the senator, had a meeting with the CS Matiangi and the security team, and that today the CS has also proceeded there. Our committee is looking at it seriously because, Mr. Speaker, just in March, there was a similar issue of 6 watchmen killed in a place called Kilingili in Viga County, and there have been other small such killings in Western. And for those of us who know Western well, it reminds us of a gang in the 70s that was called Angola Msumbiji that terrorized residents of Viga and Kakamega. We are not sure if it's related, but we're taking it extremely seriously, and we'll be reporting back to this House at the soonest available opportunity, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Senator Uta.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your indulgence. Mr. Speaker, I have a statement that I want to issue to the relevant committee. And it is more urgent, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to the Standing Order 48.1 to seek a statement from...
Order, Senator Outa.
Yeah.
The chair is not aware about the statement, as the statement is not approved.
Mr. Speaker, I have the approval before me
Order,
here.
order, Senator. Order. Approach the chair. Senator Pareno. Approach the chair, Senator Outa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had quickly rose on a point of order after the conclusion of your ruling on my statement, because I was feeling, Mr. Speaker, that considering the urgency of this matter, if you could have given the time frame for the committee, because there was no time frame that was given. And as you note from my statement, there are schools that don't have even a single teacher. There's no education going on in certain schools. So, Mr. Speaker, I was saying, I can see that you were interrupted, that after you made the ruling on the statement that I had made, I was going to request that you give a time frame for the committee because of the urgency of the matter, considering that I have given you names of schools that don't have a single teacher and no education is going on.
Honorable Senators, considering the weight of the matter, Senator Langat, the chair of Education Committee, you have 7 days to report on the statement.
Pending issues, and I would like to request maybe 14 days.
Okay, given Senator Langat, 14 days, you report in 14 days.
Yes.
Okay. Senator Outa, proceed.
Order, Senator Sakaja. Thank you, Speaker, for your indulgence. I'm going to take 1 minute. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask for a statement, pursuant standing order number 48.1, to the relevant committee of Senate Public Account concerning the closure of bank accounts of the Kisumu Urban Project, which is also known as KUP. A Kenyan and a French government funded aid of infrastructure, expansion, and social amenities for the benefit of the residents of Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, number one, in the statement, I want the committee to find and explain the circumstances that led to the closure of the project's bank accounts. And number two, Mr. Speaker, state whether there have been an investigation into the operations of the project prior to the closure of the accounts. And if so, table the findings of the such investigation. Mr. Speaker, this is an urgent matter. As we stand now, my county is going to be able to lose in terms of projects. We've been receiving in a tune of 4.7 billion Kenya shillings to different projects in Kisumu County. And without knowing the circumstances, after the Treasury has sent the money to some other ghost accounts in Kisumu, the DCIO moved in and they are trying to investigate why the Kisumu County had a different account rather than the previous one. And this is a matter of concern because as I speak now, most of the contractors are out of sight because they fear they will never be paid. And that's why I want the relevant committee to move in with speed and to come up with a finding as to what had happened, why these banks' accounts were closed. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Outa, approach the chair. Honorable Senators, the statement therefore stands committed to Public Accounts Committee. Next order.
Order number 8, the Election Laws Amendment number 2 Bill, Senate Bills number 37 of 2018. Second reading. Mover to reply.
Senator Dr. Agnes Zani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to reply, and I start by thanking the senators who contributed to this amendment in this bill, which is it was a simple amendment, but very, very important for election processes. We have noted the various views that were presented, some of the amendments and some of the suggestions, and we'll put this into consideration even as we progress with this bill. I therefore beg to reply and request the putting of the question to be deferred to a later date pursuant to Standing Order 61.3. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I therefore defer putting question on election laws, amendment number 2 Bill, Senate Bill number 37 of 2018. Next order.
Order number 9, the Election Laws Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 33 of 2018. Second reading, division.
Honorable Senators, I defer order number 9. Next order.
Order number 10, motion, adoption of the report of the Mediation Committee on the Warehouse Receipt System Bill, Senate Bill number 10 of 2017.
Honorable Senators, I defer order number 10. Next order.
Order number 11, motion, realization of gender equity in elective and appointee positions in Kenya.
Senator Kano Naomi Jilo Wako.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for allowing me to do this. And I beg to move the following motion. Aware that the Constitution of Kenya recognizes dignity, economic, social, and cultural rights, education, housing, and the right of health, including reproductive health, and that the principle of equality and non-discrimination is established as a core value of leadership and the national values and principles of governance, include human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, equality, human rights, and non-discrimination and protection of marginalized groups, among others. Further, aware that the Constitution of Kenya has very progressive articles that indicate commitment to the international and regional obligation arising from treaties and conventions and other commitments signed or ratified. Cognizant that Kenya has ratified the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women and the Protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights of the Right of Women, which are international instruments that are key to promoting women's rights. Recalling that policy framework to enhance gender equality has also been developed and include the National Gender and Development Policy 2000, the Kenya Vision 2030, Sessional Paper number 2 of 2006, the National Land Policy, the National Policy for Response to Gender-Based Violence, and the National Policy for the Abandonment of Female Genital Mutilation. Noting that, despite there being sound constitution, provisions, and elaborate policy framework to realize gender equality, both national government and county governments have not done enough to realize the achievement of gender equality. Mr. Speaker, to date, many girls are still going through the FGM that affects their lifestyle in different ways. Recently, I was surprised to read an article from somewhere, and the article says, a clinical officer in my home is about to circumcise a 32-year-old woman. Her husband says she must be cut, otherwise the whole family will be cursed. The doctor claims he has obtained all consents from the lady, the husband, and the family members, and is just waiting for the group to arrive in order for him to conduct that. The woman is a mother of 2. Chair, you can see the struggles that we go through as a nation. While many of us are fighting the continuation or the practice of FGM, others are going back to what they have already abandoned and to what the government is really working on to stop. So that means that we are far from achieving some of these goals. Again, when it comes to constitutional right, we all know that even when it comes to 30% that has been given to women and marginalized groups, many people even register their companies in the name of women or a group of women, and then at the end of the day, the beneficiaries are still men or business guys who are there to exploit because the women have nothing that they can do on their own. So, concerned that women in Kenya experience hardship when it comes to elective offices and are underrated by society, with most opportunities for elective and appointive offices being awarded to men. Again, Mr. Speaker, we know that many women go through a lot of hardship when it comes to elective position. Some are abused, others are given nicknames, and others are marginalized in many ways. And sometimes people even stop them from getting into some places. And women have gone through nasty experience. In fact, when I first joined politics, somebody called me, sat with me and said, "You do not belong to this group." And I said, "Why?" He said, "This is not for honorable women. The women that are in politics are women who have records, who are known for doing funny things in the society, and who have no respect for themselves." Mr. Speaker, we all know that the women who are in politics and who hold different offices have always performed. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves that Parliament fast-track the enactment of the law that shall give effect to the 1/3 gender rule. We know what has happened, but this, again, is still our request, that pursuant to Article 81 of the Constitution, both the national and county government observe the principle of equality and empowers the female gender by increasing the appointive position to at least 50%. Mr. Speaker, some time back, I shared with lots of women who hold different positions. And yes, sometimes because our Constitution says that women are employed, but even in that, they go through different challenges. Sometimes even when you have the same qualification as the man that even maybe is answerable to you, he is given more salary than what a woman is given. That pursuant to Article 81 of the Constitution, both the national and the county governance observe the principle of equality and empowers the female gender by increasing the appointive position to at least 50%. Number one, from the onset, Mr. Speaker, I am greatly honored to move this important motion that speaks to the realization of policy framework to realize gender equality in this country. The terms of this motion are now very familiar to many of us in this parliament and the previous parliament. 3 bills on how to achieve gender equality have been moved in both houses. In fact, 4 now maybe, both houses since the promulgation of the new constitution. However, none has bore fruit. We all know what happened to the last Duale bill that we all fought for. Lots of NGOs and the people who support women invested in it by having conferences and creating a lot of awareness, but even this failed the last minute. The journey towards attainment of gender equality has been a long one for women in this country. However, the Constitution of Kenya 2010 in Article 91 provides that no more than 2/3 of members of elective bodies shall be of the same gender. Number 4, unlike several years ago, it is now common to find women in leadership positions around the world. In Kenya, since independence, women have been underrepresented in leadership positions. There is some remarkable improvement, but a lot needs to be done. One may ask why this motion. Unlike men, women face a number of challenges to make it to a leadership position. Among them, cultural and religious consideration, where our religions bar women from leadership position. We also know the patriarchal communities that are only led by men, where women are considered as children, where women, even the wise woman who is known to be very intelligent. In fact, in my own culture, they say that the women can only be big, but can never be intelligent enough. So they believe that even a young man of 18 years can be more intelligent, can be more wise than a woman of 50 years. A lack of finances to facilitate campaigns. This is what is known to all of us because women are taken as a property, and the man owns everything. So when a woman wants to facilitate her campaigns, she must beg, and she will, most of the time, not even get the approvals. A rough political terrain. Mr. Speaker, you know that campaigns in Kenya is not an easy thing. And from the way God created us, sometimes it is challenging even to go through some of this experience. And it is even worse for pastoralist women to go through this. And that is why we are the process of relating to political parties, that is also a challenging one. Low levels of education, early marriages, and other things. Women are confined to domestic roles. As we all know, that they take care of their husband, they take care of the children, and that poses a big challenge. So, media portrayal and voter perception of a woman's place is in the kitchen. We all know that everybody believes that where women belong is to the kitchen and not outside the house. This has all affected women. False perception and stereotypes that women leaders will just represent issues relating to women and children. That is what people say. False implications that additional seats to ensure affirmative action will cause the country's wage bill to increase. Mr. Speaker, we know very well that many people say that, and especially now, many people say that we want to punguza mizigo. And what we need to realize is that the mizigo belongs to all Kenyans. And it is not the positions that women hold that has become a burden to this nation. But it is because of our poor planning that we are in the mess that we are in today. Number 6, the Constitution has gone into great detail to talk about equality and freedom from discrimination, not only for women, but also the youth, persons with disability, and the other communities. Number 7, globally, women are still underrepresented. As of October 2017, out of the 193 UN countries, 11 had a woman serving as head of state, and 12 had a woman as head of government. UN 2017. Within parliaments, only the Nordic countries come close to equal representation, with women making up to 41 of their single house parliaments. In all other regions, fewer than 3 in 10 parliamentarians are women. 28.5 in the Americas, 26 in the Europe, excluding Nordic countries, 24% in sub-Saharan African, 19 in Asia, 18% in the Pacific, and 17.5 in Arab states. Number 8, Mr. Speaker, in Africa, Rwanda has the highest number of women in parliament. And that is why I think Rwanda is performing very well. They have brought total transformation to leadership of that country, and that country is growing very fast. The total number of women in legislation now stands at 61.2% in Rwanda. Number 9, where are we in terms of representation? In the Kenyan parliament, the current Senate has representation of 23.32%. The National Assembly has a representation of about 21.84%. The total percentage of female MPs in parliament is only 21%. Majority of the counties have women leaders who are nominated. Very few are elected. Why do we need more women to take up leadership roles? Women participate in influencing legislative business and eventually affect sectors such as education, health, security, and etc. As caregivers of their families, women have a greater influence on gender-based budgeting. The health of newborn child, for example, is best understood by a woman. Women, through the policies, they influence and affect the survival of communities. Participating in leadership positions in national, parliamentary, and country assemblies, the devolved system of government has provided a perfect opportunity for women leaders to interact at the grassroots level. Consequently, women leaders are able to solve basic problems facing communities. Role models for the young women and girls. How and why should we achieve the 1/3 gender? The Parliament of Kenya was expected to have ensured that provision on affirmative action were met by 27th August 2015. To date, no law has been passed by Parliament. It is worth noting that the Constitution did not state how appointment/election of women to position would be achieved. Countries around the world have improved representation through various methods that fit their context, including gender quotas, such as voluntary party quotas and reserved seats. Number 2, political party policies that allow for representation by women. Number 3, building networks that assist women in succeeding in electoral process. Number 12, noting the terms of motion, I urge the Parliament to fast-track the passage of a law on the one-third gender rule. Further, that the national government and county government observe the principle of equality and empower the female gender by increasing appointive position to at least 50%. Finally, the seat should not be just about meeting the one-third rule, but about allowing women to take a leading role. The unfortunate incidents happening in our counties, of course, we women leaders have gone through so many things, and especially women speakers. And again, we also need to challenge those women who have managed to rise to the leadership positions, to protect their seats, to also serve this country with a lot of dignity and doing their work professionally. Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I once again thank you for this opportunity. I beg to move and request Senator Cherargei to second this motion. Thank you.
Senator Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, from the onset, I want to congratulate Senator Wako with a Q for this very important motion. I think this is a conversation that we have continued to have as a country since the promulgation of 2010 Constitution. Mr. Speaker, sir, when you look at Article 10, one of the key words that has been used is non-discrimination and gender equality. I think the women of this country have come a long way in trying to achieve gender parity in elective and appointive positions in this country. Mr. Speaker, I am privileged to come from a county where one of the first firebrand members of parliament, the late Chelagat Mutai, at that time when politics was male-dominated, he was able to represent the former Eldoret North constituency, which was later represented by our beloved Deputy President, His Excellency Dr. William Ruto. He rose and showed that women could do anything in this country to be who they are. Even Mr. Speaker, sir, Fipi Asio, at that time beat the famous disciplinary Kanu chair at that time from Luo Nyanza. And I think women have come a long way. And this is very the gains that would want not to be eroded. And therefore the Constitution and Article 10 did capture very well the future and aspirations of achieving the gender equality. And I think women are in a category that all of us, including the marginalized, including the young people living with disabilities, and many other the young people, that they must be given an opportunity to be able to lead in this country, to be able to participate in the leadership of this country and the judiciary. And you heard, Mr. Speaker, sir, the other day our beloved President, His Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, said he hopes in his lifetime that he would see a woman president in Kenya. And I think that one should have excited the women, because the majority of voters who are very loyal and committed during voting day is because of women. So I hope the women took that advice very seriously coming from the head of state, and I want to assure them they have our full support when time comes for a woman president to run for presidency in this country. But because, Mr. Speaker, sir, the 2022-2032 is already sorted, we would advise women to run from 2032 and onwards. And I can assure you, from where we are sitting, we shall ensure we have the woman president in this republic, Mr. Speaker. So I want to urge women that the president did tell women that they need to come out, they need to stand and ensure they run for presidency, Mr. Speaker. Sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is worth to note that 29%,
Senator Pareno.
That 29% of people who run in
Senator
the state of
Pareno,
Kenya,
proceed.
Mr. Speaker, is the chair of legal, none other than a chair of legal committee, who is a lawyer of good standing, is in order to mislead this house and to allege that 2022 presidential ticket is already sorted out, when we all know, like I know, as a chair of election board, that there is no such candidate that has been sorted out as of now? Is it in order to mislead and try to give wrong facts to this House?
Mr. Speaker, sir, Senator Parino did not tell this House which chair is he, because I don't think he's the chair of IEBC. Maybe he would have clarified. All the same, Mr. Speaker, so what I was saying is very simple, that Jubilee as a party, we have already sorted ourselves, and Kenyans and the blessings of God Almighty, everything will happen as it is planned. So I want to assure him that there will be an opportunity of exercising that democratic right during the voting. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wanted to comment something, because I told you I come from a county where one of the vibrant, this is a challenge to women, in as much as I support this motion. I think also women have come a long way. In the history of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, sir, the highest turnover of women to run for elective positions for both senator and governor position and other was 29% in the history of this country. And this should motivate women to go for better things. As we talk, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the first time since post-devolution, 3 governors who are of female gender have been elected. Governor Joyce Labos of Bomet, Governor Ngilu of Kitui, and Governor Anne Waiguru of Kirinyaga. And we want to challenge my sister. You and other senators and leaders and inspire more Kenyans to elect women into this position. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, because I didn't want to take much of time, because I know there is a lot of interest in this matter, the political party's role, and I'm happy that Senator Pareno is here, and she's the one who has been signing nomination papers. I wish that Anne would only be signing for women to get nomination tickets for one of the largest political parties in this country. Because we want also to see political parties incorporating women to be part of key decision makers, where we know, and I know Senator Pareno, where we know that the women must play a critical role in the decision of how parties are run in this country. Because we know our people vote based on political affiliation, political follow-up. If you come from a region, those are areas that we want all of us to ensure that we inculcate women. So I want to challenge the political parties. As we talk, even people like Martha Karua, Honorable Martha Karua, these are people who stood and were political party leaders. We want to challenge them, Mr. Speaker, sir, that our political parties must give a role to the women so that they can be key in ensuring that women are elected into position. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think our social culture and cultures and values, as a society, we need to value women. There are regions when you go in this country, they don't elect women. We need to know, and I know it goes beyond what the law provides for, and we ensure that we move forward. Mr. Speaker, I support and look forward, even as we ensure that we have gender equality, we must also look into the future where we are incorporating youth, we are incorporating people living with disabilities and many other factors so that we can move and go forward, and so that we avoid non-discrimination of any aspect of the society, be it people living with disability, the youth, the women in this republic. And finally, Mr. Speaker, sir, even as we talk about the elective position of a third gender rule, the famous Duale bill, whether the third gender rule that we must pass that law, we want also to challenge, because the government entities, the state parastatals, the county governments must take into consideration. Because you walk into some county governments in this republic, Mr. Speaker, sir, they don't observe the gender parity. You walk to some state corporations that are parastatals, and even the executive, even the current cabinet of President Uhuru Kenyatta does not meet the gender threshold. So we want to challenge that even in future, that we must factor and ensure that it is 50-50% going forward, and we move forward as a country, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Senator Wako, and I say we fully support and we look to full realization. The future for the women of this country is very luminous. We want you to work hard, not only to get nominated, but we want also to go out and ensure, and I want to assure this because I sit in the jail as the chair, Mr. Speaker, sir. We are working on the audit of elections of 2017, general elections and fresh presidential elections audit of 26th October of repeat presidential election. I want to assure, and we have sat with the IBC, that we must relook how the election process is conducted in this country. Because as Senator Wako has said, the field is never level to ensure that women can compete fairly because of dirty tricks, because of how hooliganism can drain our campaigns. We need the IBC and even IBC to be more stronger so that any person who intimidates women, any person who fights women unfairly, they must fail force of the law. And I know when we come on the audit of elections law, we'll ensure that we give that a priority and protect our women going forward. And I want to challenge the political parties, let us support women so that we never know, but I know the leadership of women, as we can see across the country, have done extremely well. From that, Mr. Speaker, I look into the future where my daughter, my mother, my sister will have a country where they can rise up. They will not be charged of the agenda, but the content of what they can provide for this country. I support Mr. Speaker, sir. I second Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honorable Senators, I now therefore propose the question that, aware that the Constitution of Kenya recognizes dignity, economic, social, and cultural rights, education, housing, and the right to health, including reproductive health, and that the principle of equity and non-discrimination is established as core value of leadership and the national values and principles of governance, including humanity, human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, equality, human rights, non-discrimination, and protection of marginalized groups, among others. Further aware that the Constitution of Kenya has very progressive articles that indicate commitment to the international and regional obligations arising from treaties and conventions and other commitments signed or ratified. Cognizant that the Kenya has ratified the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women and the Protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights of the Right of Women, which are international instruments that are key to promoting women's rights. Recalling that the policy framework to enhance gender equality has also been developed and include the National Gender and Development Policy 2000, the Kenya Vision 2030, Sessional Paper number 2 of 2006, the National Land Policy, the National Policy for Response to Gender-Based Violence, and the National Policy for Abandonment of Female Genital Mutilation, noting that despite there being sound constitutional provisions and elaborate policy framework to realize gender equity, both national government and county governments have not done enough to realize the achievement of gender equality. Concerned that women in Kenya experience hardships when it comes to elective offices and are underrated by society, with most opportunities for elective and appointive offices being awarded to men. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves, 1, that Parliament fast-track the enactment of the law that shall give effect to 1/3 gender rule, and 2, that pursuant to Article 81 of the Constitution, both the national and county governments observe the principle of equality and empowers the female gender by increasing the appointive position to at least 50%. Senator Pareno.
Once again, thank you, Speaker, for this session to support and congratulate Senator Naomi Wako with a cue for coming up with this motion. I note, because I sit closely with her in the Committee of National Cohesion, where she's the Vice Chair, I note that this is a motion that has been long overdue, probably drawn and filed, and has been waiting to prosecute it or debate it, and until probably the two-third gender rule debate in the other house went on and might look like it was meant to strengthen that particular debate and also put our say as a Senate to that debate that has been going on. But nonetheless, this affirmative action and promoting women in appointive and elective positions is still a current issue, because as we speak, the two-third gender rule bill that was in the National Assembly did not meet the threshold and therefore did not solve for us the problem that we have in elective positions. So we are still where we are, that women in this country do not have the rightful place, and in terms of taking positions, in terms of making decisions, in terms of sitting on the tables where decisions are being made. And that is why we keep talking, and we will never tire to keep talking, to keep pressing, to keep making sense, because I know a lot of people know and the sense that we are talking about, and a lot of them support us. But somehow, for some reason, it never comes to be as we wish. Because as we speak, even before we look at the elective positions that we have, even looking at the cabinet and the CSs that we have right now, there is no gender balance. The two-third gender balance is not there. And it's like, it's just being taken like normal. Even as much as we make noise all over, still, even when the president is appointing, we expect that the president of this country is in himself looking at this constitutional provision. Because this is a constitutional provision. It is a right. So it is no longer business as usual when we don't have things in place. I am aware that there are court decisions on this, that you must comply with this constitutional provision. In fact, the court has made several rulings on it. And nobody seems to be taking or putting into effect what these courts have said about us complying with our constitution. And we came up with this constitutional provision of having this two-third gender rule because of the history we've had as a country and because we wish well for this country. And it came out clearly from the Kenyans. Whatever is in the 2010 constitution is after a decision, after public participations by all Kenyans. So I don't know why it is so difficult. If it is difficult in terms of elections, when people decide it is the people who vote and they end up not voting women, it should not have been even difficult when it comes to appointment of ambassadors. Look at the recent appointments that we've just seen on ambassadors. We have seen appointments to chairs, to boards. We have seen appointments to parastatals. Have we even complied on the two-third gender rule as we make these appointments? We have not. If we are serious, we look at a sister country like Rwanda, where I went for the last election observation. I was, as a member of the Security Committee, I was there for election observation. And in fact, they increased the number of women in this election from the last election to 61% of the entire membership in their parliament. So this country must be having something that we don't know. But we know, we are actually just pretending that we don't know. If there is a country that is doing so well in terms of development, a country that is doing so well in terms of everything. In fact, it was rated the other day, like Kigali being rated the cleanest city in Africa. You know, they have, the other day we were told that they even have drones that drop medicine to hospitals. We drop medicine by drones. And yet here we still have people dying. We cannot even copy simple good acts of a small, of our young, very young sister country that is doing so well. We should even copy from their leadership characteristics. When we went for this election observation, we found out that the first day there is election for the early election for people with disability. Then you come on another day, you have elections for women alone, so that you give them the conducive environment to choose their leaders and to top up on the two-third gender rule. So you can imagine how peaceful it was. In fact, when we went to the polling stations, we found music, patriotic songs. There's a DJ somewhere doing patriotic songs on a polling station. I never even saw a police officer anywhere near the voting area, near the entrance to the polling station. What there was music, patriotic songs for that country. What there were flowers on the table next to the ballot paper. What there was decoration of a polling station. So we went there and found a polling station is decorated by different fabric, national colors, and with flowers just there next to the ballot box, and people singing as they go to vote. What a country it is. Then here, the first thing you find as a woman is your legs being broken, your hands being broken, your car being attacked before you even get anywhere near the voting day. By the time you are reaching the voting day, you are faceless. We do not have the right conducive environment that we should create as a country. Yet, we brag to be the big sister in East Africa, yet we are not even leading the way to show that we can do it better. So I think we need to get serious on this two-third gender rule bill, rule, so that then we see seriousness right from the top to the lowest cadres. From appointments to the CSS positions, appointments to boards, to ambassadorial positions, we need to see it, but we are not seeing it, meaning we are still not there, we are still not serious. I want to say that we also need to come up, the rest of the political parties should catch up with what ODM does. I want to speak today for ODM when it comes to women leadership in the party. Right from our structures, we have structures that starts from grassroots. For Women League, we have a whole Women League, right from the polling station to the national level. So we have cadres of women in leadership within the party. That is why some of us are where we are today. Then we have a youth league, which still has women who are youthful, right from the polling station top to the top national level. So we have a national league office, and then we have a ward league, we have a polling station league, we have a constituency, we even have county. Then we have the mainstream. So we have two good rows of leadership within the party. And of course, when you see the kind of leadership that is there even at the neck, we comply with two-thirds. So I ask the rest of the political parties to do the same. First of all, have the structures because they have none, and then in those structures, comply, so that then we lead by example. So as we call upon the appointive authorities to also ensure that we have the two-thirds, we have the balance there, we also call upon the political parties to do the same, so that then we are able to push at the same time. So I applaud my sister for coming up with this, because we know that women all have a big chunk of the backbone of the economy of this country. It is the women that toil in the gardens. They are the ones that are in the maize plantations working. They are the same ones who are harvesting and even storing. They are doing everything. They contribute a lot to the economy of this country. So how can you leave a whole lot that is contributing to this economy not to benefit with the little that there is before the rest is stolen? Because a lot of it is stolen. Then we also are saying that women, I'm not saying the statistics show that women are a very high percentage in terms of population of this country. Almost 50%, over 50%. And here you are leaving behind a whole lot when it comes to development. You are leaving behind a whole lot when you're seated on the table making decisions. I was just asking the other day whether the BBI complies. Those that are in the Building Bridges initiative, do we comply? Is it a male-dominated or women? How many women do we have? About 3? So we need, so that when decisions are being made, the women should be there to make decisions. They should also contribute to those decisions. So that at the end of the day, it is not just in parliament, it's not just in elective positions, even in such a serious body as the BBI, because I believe in it. If you are building bridges, women are the best even when you call upon them to build those bridges. They are the ones that know how to cry out to their children And there is nobody who does not have a woman in their life. You have a mother, you have a son, a daughter, you have a sister, you have a wife. There are women all over, all these men. So what happens when the men are making decisions minus the women? So I really support this. And if we could only copy even a little bit from our sister partner state, Rwanda, it is showing the way for the women, and we'll be able to go places, and I support.
Senator Gertrude Musuruve.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity. Sorry, thank you, Speaker. I apologize for the mix-up. Thank you, Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to add my voice. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, sir, that I support Senator Wako in this motion. And one, as a woman, and I know what marginalization is like as a woman, I support her strongly. And then, Mr. Speaker, as a woman living with disabilities, the marginalization is even double, triple. So I feel her even more on this particular motion. And I really commend her for coming up with it. And Madam, sir, I want to say that the mover of the motion has candidly told us about the national values. And some of the national values that we should not even forget is the values of ensuring that we support our marginalized, is the values with regard to equality, values with regard to discrimination. These are values as a country we must uphold. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, sir, that if we are not able to defend our constitution and these values, it will be very difficult to even achieve Article 10(2), 2D, that talks of sustainable development. And Mr. Speaker, we are living in the era where all countries are talking about sustainable development. And there's no way as a country we can achieve sustainable development if we do not work with a significant number of population, that is the women, and even children in this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, there's need for us as a country to ensure that we are working with our marginalized, we are working with our women, we are working with our children, we are working also with our women with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, I want to say also that Kenya ratified the UN Convention that really is against gender-based violence, conventions that are really against discrimination. And if we ratified as a country, it means that we are actually bound by international laws. And if we are bound by international laws, we must stand up as a country and ensure that we are doing what other countries internationally are doing to ensure that discrimination comes to a stop. Discrimination of women comes to a stop. Discrimination of women with disabilities comes to a stop. Madam Speaker, there's need for the national and county government to ensure that they realize the gender rule. And I want to say, Madam Speaker, that when it comes to appointing positions, when it comes to elective positions, the county government, the national government needs to be sensitive and ensure that the voice of women is raised at the national level, at the county level. And when you're talking about county, national and county level, it means that if there are any appointments that come on board, with regard to national appointments, with regard to county appointments, the executives need to really interrogate and ensure that the women perspective comes in, that women's voice is raised, and even as you're talking about raising the voice of women, they also need to ask themselves, among the women, how many women with disabilities have we given a voice? And I want to say, Madam Speaker, I truly support what Senator Wako has said in this motion, that she has proposed 50% appointive and elective positions be given to women. And even the 50% appointive and elective position, it needs to be very clear that even when these appointments are being given, let also, out of the 50%, a significant percentage, for instance, 10%, be given to women with disabilities. Because even women with disabilities, in terms of being given a voice, their voice, excuse me, their voice is very minimal. Because, Madam Speaker, even when we go to the counties, you will find that in some county assemblies, there is no single woman with a disability who has been given a voice, and the representation is missing. So as we fight for our fellow women, let us also remember this category of women that is perpetually forgotten, and sometimes forgetting women with disabilities could be as a result of probably lack of proper sensitization, and there's need to also involve these women. Madam Speaker, I'm suggesting that as a Senate, I'm suggesting that as a nation, we must endeavor to be patriotic. And we cannot be patriotic if we cannot defend our Constitution, if we cannot defend our national values, if we cannot stand out and say, we are bringing to a stop the issue of marginalization of women, we are bringing to a stop the marginalization of women with disabilities, and we must defend our Constitution. We can only defend our Constitution if we walk our talk. And walking our talk has implication that we raise the voice of women in this country in elective and appointive positions, and also raise the voice of women with disabilities in this country. Madam Speaker, it is clearly the case worldwide that women and children are among the world's poor. And we must bring this to a stop. We must endeavor to ensure that we are not subjecting women into poverty. We are giving them a chance to make it. We are giving them a chance to be empowered. And I want to say, Madam Speaker, empowering a woman is just synonymous to empowering a whole society, a whole community, and a whole nation. And why am I saying this? Because I know, Madam Speaker, that for sure a woman who is empowered will ensure that her family stands, will ensure that the children are going to school, will ensure that she is adding value to this nation in terms of political, social, and economic stability. Madam Speaker, it is very clear, and I even heard Senator Pareno citing the case of Rwanda, and the mover of the motion has also cited that in Rwanda, women have been given economic empowerment. In terms of political representation, they are at 61.2%. And we can benchmark, we can borrow a leaf from what is happening in Rwanda as a country, and look for mechanisms of ensuring that women representation in parliament is high. And yes, it's doable. If it is happening in Rwanda, if it happened in Rwanda, then it can happen also in Kenya. I want to say, Madam Speaker, that women empowerment is an independent variable. And why am I saying it's an independent variable? Because women empowerment affects the family directly. Women empowerment affects children directly. Women empowerment affects everyone else directly. If the women are empowered and they're able to bring something on the table, it means that everyone will be involved in the issue of development in this country, from the family level to societal level and to national level. So I want to say, Madam Speaker, that this is an issue that we must really interrogate as a country. And if people are uncomfortable with the issue of two-thirds gender rule, then let us rebrand it and talk about giving women a heavy voice, or giving women a bigger voice, so that we look for mechanisms of ensuring that women are given more visibility. And I want to say that, Madam Speaker, that this issue of women empowerment, it is an issue that even party leaders have had the debate, and I remember also the Right Honorable Raila Odinga himself came to Parliament to listen to this because he really empathizes with the plight of women. And I'm sure even as our political leaders hear about these issues, they're going to do something within the structures, their own party structures, to ensure that they implement this, so that what happened in 2017 of not giving women a bigger voice will actually come to a stop, and women will be given a bigger voice. And it is also good because I know the national and county executives have been listening to these debates, and they're going to correct the issue so that women are given more voice. I want to say, Madam Speaker, as I finally conclude, that perception of women in this country must stop. We are in a patriarchal society, but this must stop, so that women should be seen as partners in economic development, partners in social development, partners in terms of policy formulation, so that they'll be able to come up with policies that affect women, and they will speak for themselves. And when they speak for themselves, women will be more empowered, and they'll be able to address the issues that drag women behind. So I want to actually support this motion, and I hope, it is my belief and hope that it will reach, it will see light of the day. And thank you, thank you, Senator Wako, for coming up with this motion, and thank you, Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to support it. I support. Thank you.
Senator Pogisio Samuel Losron.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I stand to support this bill. Madam Speaker, I do want to congratulate Senator Naomi Wako and the senators who have spoken before me and say, Madam Speaker, this is a motion that should not take too long to deal with. I think this House would stand in unison to support the gender equality bill. Madam Speaker, you know, the more we speak about these things in terms of theories and academics, and the more we even compare ourselves with countries like Rwanda and so on, is to miss the point. I think ideally, Madam Speaker, this is the issue of a psyche of a people. This is an issue of culture. This is an issue of people coming to terms with who they really are. The core of the human spirit should be able to guide Kenyans to know that their attitudes towards the woman is the first thing to change. Well, Speaker, every time we look at, I look at the newspapers these days, you hear another woman has been strangled, another has been attacked, and so on. Are those, Madam Speaker, are these the same people that you really expect to come to terms with equality and equity? If their attitude towards the woman is, the Kenyan woman is like that. Madam Speaker, we have to work harder than just discussing these things theoretically. We have to address the male counterparts. We have to address the nation on the issue of not just of numbers, because numbers alone won't work. When are we going to begin to own in our own attitudes and our minds the fact that women are equal in our Constitution? We are all given equal treatment. In fact, Madam Speaker, Article 27 of our Constitution says exactly that women and men have the right to equal treatment. That is our own Constitution, Madam Speaker. So we don't even have to belabor the point. The attitude that we have, the things that we read every day about the way we treat women as though they are objects of mistreatment, that is what needs to go. And if you come to the same people, if that attitude doesn't go, Madam Speaker, then we can't come back. We come back to this man and say, give us an equal opportunity. Not with that attitude. I think we need to do more than just legislate. We need to go to our roots, to go back to our roots. We need to go to our boys and girls in schools and begin there and help them to treat each other with the equality and equity. With those eyes now, we'll have to progressively reach a point where we understand, Madam Speaker, that we need to have those 2/3, 50%, and so on. I'm just, Madam Speaker, saying that there is a lot that can be done here and legislate here. But in reality, there seems to be a problem with the way we look at women, our female counterparts. Madam Speaker, the good book, the Bible, the Quran, and all these books will tell you about equity, equality, and that God created everyone in his image. And I think that is really where we need to go back to. And I think I want to challenge the churches, the mosques, the temples, everybody, to begin to address the issue of honoring our women, respecting women, giving them the opportunities. Already we have done well in educating the woman, the girl child. We've done well. And so we can no longer have the excuse of no workforce. Maybe in the past it used to be. Now we have them. Madam Speaker, now I think even the girl child is almost surpassing the boy child now. I think now we are almost beginning to work for the rights of the boy child now more than the girl child in terms of education. But you see, that is not enough. Women are catching up. Women are playing catch up in all these positions. And I think the best thing is for us all to gain that respect, to get to the roots of our culture and accept the very facts. Madam Speaker, the decision makers today, mostly of course are men, and unless that attitude, and I keep saying that, unless our culture, which the African culture has been one that respects women, unless that is gone back, we go back to our culture. And then we've been through all these religious experiences, and we should use those opportunities, therefore, to get back to a place where we respect our women, the female gender. Madam Speaker, looking at this motion, and I really think it's been dealt with, this motion has come again, has come to the Senate. We've seen it try to come out and succeed in the other house, but hasn't been successful. It's the same people, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is enough evidence that this bill should simply pass without any opposition, because we have tied ourselves already in our constitution. We have a number of international treaties, Madam Speaker, that Kenya has become a signatory to. Madam Speaker, all these things have already committed us. We have already committed ourselves and our nation. And so it should not be difficult to support this. I would like to get a little bit to something that which is very strongly also in our constitution, Madam Speaker, the issue of human rights at the center of our constitution. Our constitution is one of the best in terms of putting down on paper, and that's already a commitment, our rights of human beings. Madam Speaker, those are the Article 91. Even in political parties, in Article 91, very clear. Every political party shall, not even given the options, every political party shall. And that they talk about in the rights of the marginalized, which women are part of, Madam Speaker. And then they go specifically and say gender equality and equity. This is in terms of our political parties, in nominations, in appointments, political parties. It's all granted. It's all given in our constitution. Therefore, I do think, Madam Speaker, that we've come of age. The only thing we need to do is start with the leadership. Let us begin to push for this bill to become law and to anchor this in our laws so that we can practice it. Madam Speaker, if there is a delay in practicing, we must allow the attitudes to accept that when we make a mistake, we do apologize. And I think when we have changed our attitudes, we will then be able to even apologize to the women of this country for what we've done. But Speaker, the prayers of this bill, the resolutions sought in this bill, one is that the Parliament fast-track the enactment of the law that shall give effect to the one-gender rule. Madam Speaker, these are things which already we have anchored, put in our own constitution. So it should not be a difficult thing. I think this is one of the processes. I was hoping that the other house as well would process what they have and ensure that it goes through. Madam Speaker, the other prayer is that pursuant to Article 81 of the Constitution, both the national and county governments observe the principle of equity and empowers the female gender by increasing their appointive positions to at least 50%. Madam Speaker, these are prayers which cannot be gainsaid. I mean, these are all things that can be done, albeit over time. Madam Speaker, the truth of the matter is that this country needs to grow our economy. We need to grow the jobs. We need to create the jobs and opportunities. We need, therefore, Madam Speaker, to be bold in terms of making sure that we fight corruption. And I'm sure, Madam Speaker, that having more women in appointed positions could probably help. Madam Speaker, there is a very good indication that the women are probably less corrupt. And there may be, if we have more women in appointed positions, they can protect and keep our resources better, because women have a kind of been good stewards in terms of keeping resources. I mean, not all of them, Madam Speaker. I mean, we still have our own share of those who do not do that. But generally, I think that if we do, we might be able to change the way, because mothers have a responsibility towards their families, and I'm sure stronger families we might lead to stronger families if we have more women in the workplace. Madam Speaker, in supporting what we have proposed here in terms of the resolutions, I would like to repeat that much as Rwanda as a country has made progress, Madam Speaker, let's build our own culture. Let us inculcate culture in our children. Let us allow our children to begin to know that there is respect for each other, that if a boy can do well, a girl can do well, and then empower the girl child, empower the women. Madam Speaker, a lot can be said about appointed positions, but have we given opportunity to the women so that they can compete on equal footing in terms of preparation for leadership? You know, Madam Speaker, that you can have people appointed, but are they in the crucial leadership positions? Have they been empowered? Do they know how to survive in those positions? And maybe that's one of the things that, to survive in terms of being strong, being completely empowered, so that they can run organizations without having to think of who they are. And so, Madam Speaker, the attitude, the culture belongs to both men and women. Women should also stop thinking of themselves as though they were the weaker. In terms of equality, in terms of working, Madam Speaker, women should never consider themselves as if they don't have the capacity. Those who have been educated, people with degrees the same, men and women, should know that they have the same capacity. And so that attitude must also come from women as is from the men. I want to support and encourage this House to make it so fast. Let us make this thing go through so fast. Let us pass it without any hesitation. I support. Thank you.
Senator Zani Agnes Philomena.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And let me pick it up from where Senator Pogisho left it, and the whole issue of looking at Rwanda, looking at their culture, and wondering what sort of dynamics have happened in Rwanda. I think we need to ask ourselves very soul-searching and very deep historical issues, look at historical perspectives, and ask ourselves questions about how did Rwanda get there? Did they get there because they learned to respect women more, because maybe the war left many men dead and many women mothers and figures in the society, economic provision being put in place? Is it because somewhere along the line they just got tired of the gender divide? Because I think if we don't do that, we'll miss a very important issue and a very important research question, if you may allow me to use that terminology, in understanding the dynamics of the wars, if I might call it wars, between the men and the women. Because if you think about it, you live together. You have brothers and sisters. You have men in the family. The sisters have also fathers and brothers. And on many issues, there isn't a lot of divergence. You know, they sit together, they eat together. But when it comes to the issue of materialism, when it comes to leadership, you know, that's where the battles will begin. When people talk about inheritance, when people are looking for various provisions and wealth, that is where the division begins. That's where the violence comes in. So I think what we're saying is countries like Rwanda probably have been able to move away from all that. And I think they become sort of like a case study to help us to see how women have moved into leadership and how well they have done. And indeed, on the issue of how well they have done, that is even so far more important because, again, the sort of changes that Rwanda has been able to come up with give an impetus about the way women look at development. And in their very nature, and when you look at gender perspectives and understand the way men and women are formed, they're formed in different ways. And each brings different values on the table, you know? And you find women probably will have certain perspective. If you have a meeting and there's no woman there, maybe there was just one thing which was very important that the woman might have been able to see. Likewise, if you had a meeting of all women, and maybe there was that one perspective that probably a man would have been able to put into place. So we need to get to the point where we value these sort of contributions, that we understand them, that we make them useful. Otherwise, it will be an exercise in futility. And it seemed to have been an exercise in futility at the point where this motion by Senator Naomi Wako, and she was trying to bring it, this was the very same time we were also pushing for the no more than 2/3 gender rule, trying to push the position. And there were many things that went on, many meetings, many negotiations, many discussions. But I think when the basic principle and the theoretical framework, so to speak, has not been put into place, then you're going to find there's a disconnect. And this disconnect is what we are seeing in Kenya. And this disconnect, despite the political framework, the policy framework that has been put into place, despite the constitution, despite the various progressive articles that indicate the commitment to the international and regional obligations arising from treaties and conventions and other commitments signed or ratified, we've done this willingly. So have other countries done the same thing as well. But when it comes to not being able to have a practical way to turn this theoretical framework into something practical, then you end up with a problem. Likewise, we've also entrenched it in our policy framework that is meant to enhance gender equality. We've been able to develop the National Gender and Development Policy, the Kenya Vision 2030, Sessional Paper number 2 of 2006, the National Land Policy, the National Policy for Response to Gender-Based Violence, and the National Policy for the Abandonment of Female Genital Mutilation. But culture and socialization and acculturation are things that are processes, and people see things in different ways. Sometimes in some communities, for example, where they have had female gender mutilation, we've actually recently seen in the papers that there's a certain lady doctor who is actually going to the court and saying this is a traditional practice, we really want it to be there. And you begin to see the various contradictions about how people respond to the dysfunctional nature of gender relationships. If you're looking at gender, for example, and the issue of violence, you find violence masked sometimes even in cultures. In traditional cultures, many traditional cultures were very, very good, and I'll speak about that in a bit. But some of them also had this element of violence in them, maybe as a way to take issues out. And now let's say, if a society moves in that direction, I think the lash out from women is worse than the lash out from men. So people have to be careful about the relationships, how they build them, and how they're able to progress. But what we are seeing clearly is that you could have all this in paper. And I think the most glaring is Constitution 2010, Articles 10, and the articles that really provide for gender equality, and the push just to say that, look here, The provisions that you have not been actualized. They've been actualized for county assemblies in Article 177, but they haven't been actualized, for example, for the National Assembly. For the Senate, the redistribution is not too bad, and it was a good thing that now we have the affirmative position action that has been taken, and the nominated women in the Senate. The same situation, it creates a variance in the National Assembly. But even when it came, so in the Senate, we have a provision for 2 more senators to be added for us to have a third. Now that is the third. It's not a gender parity, but again, we are comparing from where we have come from and where we're going to. Likewise, after 2030 elections, we had 3 women. We had no women senators. In 2017, we had 3. Likewise, we had no governors in 2013, and now we have them in 2017. So clearly something is changing. That something now has to be further strengthened by the output that women are able to give out in leadership. And I think Rwanda, in a sense, has that chance. As a case study, I think they've been able to stand out. They've been able to make the case for themselves in all these innovations. And the women have done the same. But again, the media strategy, the government policy, how has it worked to bring this out and to put this in such a way that they become key facts that can be able to further amplify the role that is played? Because if you don't, again, sort the lens of how people see things, you'll have women do very good things. But the way they will be presented, they will look for the negatives in it. And likewise for the men, they will look for the negatives in it. So it's very, very important, again, to have a concerted effort where you have not only just the family, the political, the economic institutions, but also other institutions, other players, for example, the media coming in to restore this first human dignity. I always say, first and foremost, you're a human being. Second, and as a human being, you deserve to have human dignity. But second, then you become either a man or woman, and you still remain a person. And therefore, the dignity that goes with being that person is very, very important. So this sort of politics, again, needs to be addressed right from the beginning. Recently, we know that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have a baby, and they're planning to bring this baby in a sort of neutral gender way. Is that the best way to go? What about the African culture and the place of a man in society, which was not a bad place? That leadership, that authority maybe created the stability that was so important. They viewed women with respect and respected them. I come from culture. I'm a Digo by birth. My mother is a Giriama. Giriama women walk with mahando, and they have the breasts out. That time, there were very few rapes. So rape is not related to anything like that. Rape is related to lack of respect. Those traditional aspects that enhanced women's place. You nurtured women because they cooked and took care of the family, and you treated them as that, and they were leaders within their own right. What has happened to that level of socialization? How are we socializing our children? Are we giving them these gender roles very, very clearly? Are they clashing along the way? And how are we handling all that? Because all that then creates a whole idea about the culture and the attitudes and the values, because you're not going to change somebody when they're 20 and 25. If they have grown up to disrespect women, they cannot change at 25. Likewise, if the women have grown up to disrespect the men, it's not going to change when they're 25. So all these perspectives are very, very important. But I think also what we have missed out somewhere along the line is a way to infuse all this within our educational curriculum. As we move and as we think about our curriculum change from outcome-oriented to competency-oriented, we want to be able to hope that somewhere along the line we'll be able to infuse these values. America, as a country, was able to change a lot for themselves by just introducing patriotism as a key element within their academic programs. And it changed the way people viewed themselves. This is what we need to do in Kenya. We need to infuse the values of equality, the values of importance of everybody really being key, values of governance, values of human dignity, values of social justice, values of inclusivity, equality, human rights. the values of actually protecting and making sure marginalized groups probably don't exist in the next so many years. So that all these are infused within a psyche of a country that will push this country to a point where they can actually blend. By the way, the moment you do that, as you remove these other levels of inequalities, you automatically also deal with the gender inequalities. Gender inequalities might be second-tier responses to other inequalities that are already there. Gender inequalities might also be a way of an interaction from other variables that are already there, and then they enhance that. So of course, as Kenya, we had our story, and our story was simple, that let us look at the provision of what we have in the Constitution. Looks very straightforward. Let's look at the provision that we have for the county assemblies. The county assemblies, using Article 177, they actually have a modality and process for making sure that there is at least no more than 2/3 of any particular gender in the assemblies, and because at this point, it's women who are less elected, then we're talking about, conversely, 1/3. And therefore, many proposals were put into place, and the proposal that finally ended up as the Ndwale bill was to allow people to actually move Article 177 and infuse that article in the National Assembly and in the Senate. Seems like a very straightforward thing to do. So that is the one issue. The other issue was even an assessment of the county assemblies to try to understand, because when we look at the provision of the county assemblies, and maybe an ad hoc committee needs to come up to look at the provisions, even there where they were given a provision for the 1/3, is it being actualized? We've had many stories from the county assemblies. Women have been removed from committees, for example. Women have been removed from leadership positions within the counties. We've had the more glaring ones about the speaker. All this, I think, doesn't augur well in terms of contextualizing and being able to move towards fast-tracking and enacting law that gives effect to the 1/3 gender rule. Yes, the law is there in place, but again, even the enactment of that law becomes something we need to think about. And therefore, various processes are put into place, KEWOPA really leading the way in this, KEWOSA involved as well. And we got to the point where, you know, this promise looked like it might really be happening, and various consultations, various dinners, people trying to, and the men spoke very well at all those meetings, as I've had them speak very well today. They were saying, you know, when we look at women, we see our mothers, we see our girls. But again, as I said earlier, sometimes somewhere along the line, that notion tends to suddenly disappear. As I wind up, I see my light is on. The correlation between development and women involvement has to be actualized. Actually, many scholars are now talking about the future management being women. Some companies actually go out of their way to ensure 60%, 70% are women because of the productivity angle, so they do better. Clear correlations have been made about conflict and not conflict and development, about specifically corruption and development. Clear correlations. Again, the whole issue of affirmative action needs to be put into place. I think affirmative action, when we look at it, has helped even in terms of STEM and in the universities and ensuring that young people can come on board. And it has helped to a large extent. But those sort of policies, we've also seen policy and action make a big difference. So we might just want to see, where are we just missing? Where is the parallelism maybe just coming in? Because clearly, we know from policy that we put into place, more girls are going into school, more girls are being retained in school. But when it comes to leadership, what is really still happening? And when it comes to fighting for public space, what is really happening that they're not able to get there despite all this? And then, as Senator Pogisho said, and others who said earlier as well, important to think about the gender balance. When you're talking about gender, gender is just the social construct. Speaker, can I have just 3 minutes to wind up, please? Oh, Oh, okay. I thought I saw that light go off. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So even as we continue to look at it in terms of the perspectives that are given, it's very, very important to be able to put affirmative action and to see how affirmative action has actually brought about development and to see where the gaps are. So this particular motion resolves that, he's hoping that the Senate resolves, and I think that this Senate has been very, very clear about gender relationships. And I was just saying that gender is a social construct. So even for boys coming up, for girls coming up is very, very key. Gender is just a social construct, how people view either men or women and men begin to respond to those specific constructs that have been put into place. So that balance, I think, is very, very clear and needs to be very, very clear and very, very important. So we then have reached the point where that bill did not go through, but I think also it has injected a new impetus around women, and I'm hearing women really saying that now maybe we want to be able to even move forward and try and move even to the 50%. And also the second prayer, that pursuant to the Constitution, both national and county governments observe the principle of equality. That principle has been put into place, but we need to ensure that it is well protected, and for appointive position also that is well protected. And maybe have mechanisms of confirming whether these provisions that were put into place have actually been actualized, and what do we do in situations where they haven't been actualized? Because I think if you put the law in place, we need to find ways of carrying those laws right through. I congratulate Senator Naomi Wako with a Q. She's been very passionate about this motion. It's a strong motion that really contextualizes the future. And as we do all this, let's think about the future for our generation, our children, our boys and our girls, as we motivate ourselves to build better societies across the world. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
There being no other requests, I ask the mover to reply.
Madam Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to greatly thank all the senators who have contributed to this very important motion. I want to thank Senator Cherargei for seconding this motion, yourself for contributing so passionately and demonstrating your own experience and sharing the importance of this motion to be supported. Dr. Gertrude Musuruve, who sat and gave her contribution so passionately, and Senator Bokisho for his contribution, and Dr. Zani. Madam Speaker, from all the different debate and contributions, we have all seen the dilemma that the women in our country face. We know very well that women play a very important role in this nation, and in fact, without women, I think Kenya would have been a very boring country. When it comes to campaigns, all the politicians rush to women, because I'm sure many of our colleagues, men, have told us that when you want to succeed, go to women because they keep their promise. And many have succeeded because women have always supported them. In life, women have brought their sons and their daughters up. They have educated them. They have stood for this country. They have fought for the freedom. They have always been there to fight for different rights, and women will continue doing that. In our context today, we have passionately pushed and fought for human rights. Senator Pokisho in his sharing said, going back to our own roots and honoring our women, the issue of Rwanda and how successful they are politically and as a country all the senators have mentioned that. That clearly shows that women are good leaders, and if we do the same in this country, I have no doubt that the confusion that we are in as a nation will be reduced. Madam Speaker, you know very well that today every Kenyan is worried about the future. Nobody knows what will happen. The issue of corruption has eaten our country, and Rwanda, we know, is clean and progressing very well. One of our senators have said that we don't need to refer just to that, but we need to make our own history. So turning theoretical framework to practical work that Dr. Zani mentioned is one of the important things that we need to do as a nation. And then proper assessment to be carried out in all the counties so that we know how our counties have put what is there for women in the Constitution. And even forming a ad hoc committee to some extent will help this country. Madam Speaker, you know that many women, MCS, have been marginalized. Many have been denied the opportunity of even bringing any bill, of speaking, and of doing different things. Women speakers have faced a lot of challenges. Women holding different positions have been challenged in many different ways. Therefore, there is need for us to do that assessment so that we know we can be guided by what is happening currently. A lot of consultation has been done. I still urge the lobby groups to continue assisting our women and our nation until we achieve our goal. Being a woman, I'm a proud person because I'm a woman, I have children, and I'm a woman leader. And if I wasn't a woman, maybe I wouldn't have been in this position. So we are proud to be women, and we will, of course, work hard so that our daughters and our sons will not face the same challenges that we are in today. I therefore appreciate the senators who have passionately contributed and the various concerns that they have brought and the comments that they have given will be considered. And I want to say I thank each one of you, and thank you, Madam Speaker.
This being a matter that does not affect counties, I therefore proceed to put the question that aware that the Constitution of Kenya recognizes dignity, economic, social, and cultural rights, education, housing, and the right to health, including reproductive health, and that the principle of equality and non-discrimination is established as a core value of leadership, and the national values and principles of governance include human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, equality, human rights, non-discrimination, and protection of marginalized groups, among others. Further aware that the Constitution of Kenya has very progressive articles that indicate commitment to the international and regional obligations arising from treaties and conventions and other commitments signed or ratified. Cognizant that Kenya has ratified the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women and the Protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights of the Rights of Women, which are international instruments that are key to promoting women's rights, recalling that policy framework to enhance gender equality has also been developed and include the National Gender and Development Policy 2000, the Kenya Vision 2030, Sessional Paper number 2 of 2006, the National Land Policy, the National Policy for Response to Gender-Based Violence, and the National Policy for the Abandonment of Female Genital Mutilation. Noting that despite there being sound constitutional provisions and elaborate policy framework to realize gender equity, both national government and county governments have not done enough to realize the achievement of gender equality. concerned that women in Kenya experience hardships when it comes to elective offices and are underrated by society, with most opportunities for elective and appointive offices being awarded to men. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves that Parliament fast track the enactment of the law that shall give effect to the 1/3 gender rule, and 2, that pursuant to Article 81 of the Constitution, both the national and county governments observe the principle of equality and empowers the female gender by increasing the appointive position to at least 50%. As many as of that opinion say aye, as many as of the contrary opinion say nay, the ayes have it. Honorable Senators, it is now 6:30 p.m., time to adjourn the business of the House. The Senate therefore stands adjourned to Tuesday, 21st May 2019 at 2:30 p.m.